Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to warn you right now, Twitter seems to be having some issues, which of course means that many of the things that I had prepared to show you today, I might not be able to show you. Some pretty incredible clips and things coming out of Fulton County. There was a meeting of the state elections board yesterday where they were forced to admit that illegal aliens have been voting in their elections for quite some time. Yet another conspiracy theory proven not to be a theory. It's conspiracy fact. We are analyzing conspiracies committed by other people. I also wanted to give a big shout out to anybody living in Texas 23. Early voting has begun. Hopefully you went out there and voted for my man, Brandon Herrera. There's also a big update on the Tony Gonzalez story. It's been a long time since I talked about Tony. Haven't really needed to because I'm not down in Texas, but scandal continues to plague him. Lots of stuff about Epstein. Les Wexner appearing today in Congress for a deposition. So, all of the requisite things, if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show, and of course, sit back, relax, and enjoy your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this. The rules of money are quite literally being rewritten right in front of your eyes. And those institutions that control the financial system are not waiting. They're not warning, and they are not wishing. They're acting. Right now, buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. You see, they're preparing for something, but the question is, are you? And for nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver, because as that world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. So let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. And while everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are already positioned. They understand that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. So visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and download your free wealth protection kit today. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. The rules are changing. Make sure you're ready. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Marcy over there on the Rumble chat, I see that she was, up until the show started, she was watching an old Baseless Conspiracies episode, which, if you're out there on YouTube and you haven't seen any of my work for the last 5 years and you've only just rediscovered me after I've come back to this accursed platform, I'm just kidding. Well, then you might also be interested to know that not only was I doing this show over on Rumble and all of the other alternative free speech platforms, excuse me, for the last 5 years, but for the last 4 years, we're on the 4th year now. For the last 3 years in total, now on to the 4th year, I've also done a number of shows on another network called Badlands Media, which you may be able to find some of them on YouTube, but primarily they're going to be over on those alt platforms. One of those shows is Baseless Conspiracies. That is every Monday night at 10:30. Every single week, I take my co-host John Harold through a conspiracy theory, aka fact. It depends on what point in the manner of proof it is. oftentimes I try to bring things that have been billed as conspiracy theories, but really ultimately have been proven to be real. And so they've been maligned by the press. Of course, I also do like to get into some of the wackier ones that maybe aren't everybody's cup of tea, but I've always been kind of a crazy esoteric kind of guy. I like getting into that strange universe type stuff. So lots and lots of shows that you guys can go back and watch over there if you didn't know that I did those. Also, every Wednesday night tonight at 9 o'clock, I will be doing another of my shows over on Badlands Media. This one's called Altered State with myself and Brad Getz. If you have been on YouTube for many years and you were there part of the early days with the Q board, then you may remember that Brad also went as Where We Go One, We Go All, also known as Calogero Getz. He's done incredible work putting together comprehensive documentaries about a lot of different things, but recently Brad actually produced a full feature-length documentary on 9/11, and you can totally watch that as well. That's for free on all platforms, as far as I know, over there on Badlands Media. You can also, I'm pretty sure, find it on Brad's channel. And then I also do a Thursday show, which is called Taken Aback with, quite frankly, and 412 and on, also known as Adel Nero. And then on Fridays at 10:30, I am part of a panel show called Only Lands, and that's kind of a comedy shit-talking show amongst friends. So regardless of all of that, at the very least, you can be here every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern to catch up on Red Pill News Live with me, Zak Paine. We're going to jump into the stories right now, but I need to say thank you, first of all, to Smart Poker over there on Pilled. Good afternoon, Patriots. Good afternoon to you, my friend. Glad to have you here, as always. Okay, so Tony Gonzalez is where we're going to begin. So you may remember Tony Gonzalez because some time ago, I brought you a tragic story about a woman, beautiful woman, single mother, who was working as an aide in Tony Gonzalez's office. She was rather high up. She and Tony spent a lot of time together. From all appearances, they were pretty close. Well, one night, I don't know where, she apparently set herself on fire and committed suicide. Now, like I said, she left behind a 8 or a 9-year-old son. When the firefighters arrived and they had put the blaze out and they were attending to her injuries, she said something that always stuck with me. She said, "I don't want to die." Now, it just seems, you know, in most cases, when people are resigned to kill themselves, when they set out to do it, they go ahead and do it. Setting yourself on fire is not a very common way for a woman to kill herself. 9 times out of 10, a woman is going to like take pills. She's going to do something that's, you know, rather painless. But self-immolation is not one of those things. I don't even think that there is data to show us how often women commit suicide by setting themselves on fire. I've said suicide so many times in the last minute. It's a good thing I'm not monetized on YouTube. Anyways, she eventually died, succumbed from her injuries, I believe just the next day. Tony put out kind of a boilerplate response to it, and he suggested that it was a real tragedy and mental health is a real thing that needs to be addressed. I said at the time, I was like, this is weird. There's something strange about this, and we need to make sure that we continue to look into it. Well, it wasn't very long before rumors of this woman and Tony Gonzalez having had an affair broke out into the mainstream. Now, you may remember Brandon Herrera. I've spoken about him on a number of occasions. Brandon Herrera is a YouTuber. He's currently running against Tony Gonzalez in the Republican primary for Texas 23. He is a Second Amendment proponent on YouTube. He's known as the AK guy. He's awesome. He does great gun content video. And in the very first time that he ran against Tony 2 years ago, Brandon forced the primary field into a 3-way primary, and then Tony beat him by like 400 votes. And also Tony outspent Brandon by like a 100-fold or something ridiculous like that. Many, many, many more millions of dollars than what Brandon spent. So the fact that Brandon, as a first-time politician, political candidate, the fact that he was able to get as many votes as he did really spoke volumes, not only about his appeal and the message that he had for conservatives in Texas, but even more so, speaking to the lack of appeal that Tony had. It was basically only through astroturfing that Tony was able to make it through the primary and then win the election in the general. Now, things are a little bit different this time because of that scandal that I mentioned of his aide who, quote unquote, committed suicide. I think it's also worth mentioning that Tony Gonzalez may have some connections to the cartel, allegedly. Not in my opinion. It's just something that I've heard. But he's definitely not a conservative candidate. He's simply a rhino. He's a Republican in name only. And you can see here in this picture with Tony and his wife, it makes a big difference when you have an affair with a staffer and then she sets herself on fire and then you refuse to talk to anybody about it. And then you take a picture with your wife on the first day of early voting. Take a look at this. Tony's been in office for several sessions already, so people know him. There are 14 bookmarks to Tony's tweet. One of them is from me. There are 146 hearts, and there are only 29 retweets. However, there are 711 comments. I went through these comments last night, and I swear to God, not a single one of them is complimentary to Tony. Every single one is talking about how his former staffer set themselves on fire, talking about how Tony's done. People saying that, actually I voted for Brandon Herrera. Here she is right here. Again, beautiful young woman, very, very tragic. And there's even a picture here that Tony Gonzalez or somebody had posted with Tony Gonzalez. Elon Musk is there because that's when he went and visited the border. And then the woman, the staffer, is right there. This meme right here came up more than anything else. I'm going to keep it real with you, Chief. They are bodying you in the comments, and you effing deserve it. Yeah, your wife voted for the guy who didn't cheat on her. Oh, endorsed by the militia industrial complex. I love that. That is so good. All right, now, the reason this is all coming up again is because the day before early voting began, a news story was released in a local San Antonio paper confirming the fact that, yes, in fact, Regina Aviles, that staffer, did have an affair with Tony Gonzalez. You can actually see the text messages right here. Miss Aviles was texting another aide to Tony, and they were talking about an inter-office problem they were having in Tony's office. And she said, I had an affair with our boss, and look at me, everything's fine. Wasn't that long after this that she was set on fire. Now, again, there's no indication from anybody that Regina was planning on killing herself. She said specifically in response to a tweet that is, a text which is blocked out because it's not exactly relevant. She said, "You're fine. I promise, just hold your head high. The office doesn't know anything about it. And if they were to find out, I have your back 1,000,000%. You will be fine. I swear to God, you will be fine. I had an affair with our boss, and I'm fine. You'll be fine." And the woman that she's talking to replies, "I know I'll be fine. I'm not afraid of that." So Tony Gonzalez has completely denied the idea that he had an affair with this woman, said it's totally untruthful. Now, that was before the story came out from a major Texas newspaper showing the proof of the affair in Regina's own words. Of course, now as a dead woman, she can't respond to this at all. And Tony's reaction to this is to simply not say anything about the affair, but then also to blame Brandon Herrera. So the Texas Tribune reached out to Tony Gonzalez, and he blamed Brandon Herrera for politicizing the death of Regina Aviles. And, of course, he completely ignored the fact that these text messages came out showing that he was sleeping with this woman who then mysteriously set herself on fire. Of course, now, it's been said that the reason she set herself on fire is because Tony promised her he was going to leave his wife. And then instead of leaving his wife, he fired her. Man, that's a scumbag move, let me just tell you. So Brandon responds, "You blame me? Are you kidding me? Tony Gonzalez is an irredeemable coward who dodges accountability and lies to the people. This started with my problems with your votes in Congress, but now I understand you are a horrifically wicked man who must be removed." And the good news about this is, according to all polling, once again, well, no, I'm sorry. For the first time now, Brandon Herrera is beating Tony Gonzalez in the primary. And the only question is, will he be able to beat Tony Gonzalez with enough votes to move on straight into the general election? There are, again, 3 candidates. And in order for Brandon to move forward into the general, he would have to get 50% of the vote in this primary. If he comes out with the most votes but doesn't reach that 50% threshold, the runoff will go to Brandon and the runner-up. That runner-up at this time appears as if it would be Tony Gonzalez. However, it may just end up being that Brandon takes the cake straight off the bat. So I wanted to put this out there. If anybody lives in Texas 23, please go out there and vote for Brandon Herrera. This guy is awesome. I was gunning for this guy to be the ATF director when President Trump took over back in January of last year. That didn't go anywhere. But I think I can see about helping Brandon get elected to Texas 23. He would be an amazing congressman because this guy is not owned by anybody. He is totally self-sufficient. He's totally based. You can also watch a number of other shows that he does. He's got a podcast that he does with Donut Operator and a couple of other guys. They're really awesome. They're really, really awesome guys. So anyways, please do yourself a favor if you live in Texas 23 and vote for Brandon Herrera. I want to see this guy get elected. Thank you very much to Sean Joe. I appreciate you, Sean Joe. Thank you for that can. All right, now, I would like to show you guys a video of Chuck Schumer. Won't be the first time that I've shown you a video of Chuck Schumer. Won't be the first time that I've shown you a video of Chuck Schumer having policy platforms that completely differ from what his policy is today. You'll remember recently we watched a video of Chuck Schumer calling the SAVE Act Jim Crow 2.0. Well, that's funny. I wonder what Chuck Schumer in 1996 would have thought about himself in 2026, 30 years later, essentially calling himself an irredeemable racist. This is a video of Chuck Schumer on the floor of the Senate, essentially railing against illegal immigration and making the case for voter ID and making the case that we need to ensure that essentially only American citizens are voting in U.S. elections, because Chuck knows that that's not the case.
Let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a Social Security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a Social Security card. This is an anti-fraud amendment. Over where we go, people say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants or others from coming here? And the number one answer we give our constituents is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud.
What they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0.
Pantaleimon says that Chuck Schumer looks weird. Well, you know, it's 30 years ago. I think he's had a little bit of work since that time, and he's definitely had some hair plugs put in. So Chuck Schumer, of course, has no baseline. He's a lifelong hypocrite. And you have to ask yourself, you know, what happened in the intervening years? Is it just that Chuck got so much richer than he was before? Did he get paid off by people? Or is he simply willing to argue for something because it's the opposite of what Donald Trump wants? I think that might tend to be it. But at the end of the day, Chuck Schumer is an ivory tower coastal elite. And anything that happens in the United States of America largely is not going to affect him. He's going to have health care for life. He's going to have a pension for life. He's got generational wealth for the rest of his life. He's also married to a very ugly woman. So I don't know what he does in his off time. But let's go ahead and say thank you very much to Bounds02, who says thank you for all you do. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. Now, let's go check in with Fulton County. So it would appear, recently we talked about the fact that Fulton County had sued the FBI and the DOJ for the seizure of those ballots. Remember, that was a criminal search warrant. There was a affidavit for probable cause. It was signed off by a judge. You know, when there is evidence of a crime that's being committed and the FBI decides that they want to investigate and they need to seize evidence to finalize that investigation and prove whether or not there was a crime, There's no such thing as what they're asking for. So Julie Adams, who is a member of the Board of Elections, she sent a letter to the Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, and she's saying that what Fulton County has done is an illegal and unauthorized lawsuit. What they're suing for is to return the ballots and all of the documents from the 2020 election. The decision to make that lawsuit, file that unauthorized lawsuit, was also a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And county officials are also misrepresenting the facts of the case in federal court. In fact, they claim that the FBI lied to the judge in this case, but it's actually Fulton County that's lying to the federal court that they filed this lawsuit in. So she's demanding that the Attorney General of the state of Georgia investigate the Fulton County Board of Elections before a hearing that is scheduled for February 27th. So this is the gist of the letter. On February 4th at 9:41 a.m., the Fulton County Board of Commissioner Chair Rob Pitts, whom we've seen, Rob Pitts is the one who said he got the tip-off before the search. He's also the one who was told that he and others would likely be arrested. He holds that press conference, and he announced that there's a lawsuit that's already been filed. But the thing is, there was never any authorization to file this lawsuit. They just kind of acted unilaterally. But it was at 12:50 p.m. when BRE Chair Sherry Allen emailed the board members earlier that day, and she said, please email me if you support filing a legal response. Now, again, the reason it's unauthorized is that in order to come to the decision to file a lawsuit of any kind, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners would need to meet. They would need to have a public meeting, and then they would need to debate and vote on whether or not they were going to file suit for something. So there was no meeting. There was no discussion. There was just this email that went around. So those are violations of Georgia law right there. The Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections never had custody of these records. So why is it that they're the ones who are suing? Also, it's not legal from the Open Records Act to meet via email and then cast a vote via email. That's a direct violation of Georgia's Open Meetings Act. It's Georgia Code 50-14-1. Every single meeting for a public body like them must be public. The votes must be open. Otherwise, they're not binding. So the fact that they held a non-binding meeting via email with a vote that was not visible to the public and is not something that holds within the boundaries of the law means that this lawsuit is wildly outside of the boundaries of anything appropriate, may even be approaching on illegal. So was Rob Pitts acting solo? Is he the one who filed the lawsuit? Did he just put other people's names on it? Remember, this is the lawsuit that Norm Eisen, the architect of the color revolution strategy, is attached to. Some of the Democrat super lawyers are on this case as well. But the thing is, Rob has no authority to do this without the publicly referred to items that I just mentioned. So there appears to be something very, very sketchy going on in Fulton County. This public press conference here where he announced the legal action, this is the same public press conference where he suggested he had received a tip-off. I'm assuming that was from Paul Brown at the Atlanta office of the FBI. Paul Brown is the one who was fired after it was deemed that he unnecessarily sent a letter of warning ultimately to the Fulton County Board of Elections so that they could take some type of action ahead of time, which is likely what led to those 40 or 50 boxes of election-related material just being disappeared into the ether. Here is that email from Sherry Allen. She says, good afternoon, all. Please email me if you support filing a legal response in court to challenge this week's search warrant pertaining to the 2020 election documents. Second, all of us at one time or another have discussed moving our monthly BRE meetings, the Fulton County Government Center, to another place, and the next meeting will be taking place there. And then somebody responds, Chairwoman Allen, yes, I am in support of a legal response. And then here we have the actual motion that's been filed by the defendants right there. Or I guess they would be the plaintiffs in this case. All right. Now, this is essentially the claims that are coming from the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. This is an article from Democracy Docket. I believe this is Mark Elias's propaganda clearinghouse for radical left-wing response here in America. But they say flagrant constitutional violation. Again, this is a criminal investigation. You have certain things that you must comply with if the FBI believes you committed a crime, receives the okay, the go-ahead from a judge after submitting an affidavit for probable cause. They say that they're looking at these particular documents because those documents would be proof of the crime. It doesn't matter that it's election-related material. Like, this is it, okay? Hand it over. That's all on you. So what they say is that the search warrant that initiated the FBI's unprecedented raid on election facility in Fulton County, Georgia, failed to provide evidence that a crime had been committed and relied on a smorgasbord of witness speculation from biased sources, county officials allege in that court filing I mentioned. The filing, which shreds the logic behind the raid, marks the county's latest effort to reclaim materials. It also makes a startling allegation that the search warrant was granted despite the FBI lacking probable cause that a crime had been committed. Guess what? The affidavit with witness statements and prior information related to the actual way that elections were being held in Fulton County is enough for probable cause. That's why a judge signed off on it. So this is merely a propaganda puff piece designed to cast doubt into the minds of Americans that might be reading it. Granted, most morons who are going to be reading Democracy Docket or getting these articles in their email inbox, they've already made up their mind. They don't believe that the FBI had any probable cause. So that's really all that we need to say. But the FBI is investigating these deficiencies and defects in the manner in which Fulton County handled the 2020 election because there's evidence to suggest that criminal activity occurred. I've gone over so many different individual points of interest. You know, let's just the tabulators, okay? Just the tabulators, the ghost tabulators, the batches of ballots that were scanned and rescanned, the inconsistencies between the original vote count, the recount, and then the sudden influx of ballots out of nowhere, which had no provenance, no chain of custody. What about the mail-in ballots that had no creases in them? That would mean that a mail-in ballot was sent in an envelope, was never creased, even though you know that the only way to get it in an envelope and get it to somebody's house, it would have to be creased. And then they were also able to send it back without creasing it. No, bro, no. It don't work like that. It just simply does not work like that. So, even though the Fulton County Board of Commissioners would have said that there was no evidence of any wrongdoing in the 2020 election, I would like to take you to last night's meeting of the Georgia State Election Board, where an attorney by the name of Karen Pachuta, she is an attorney for the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections, admits in the public meeting that, in fact, non-citizens were on the voting rolls in Fulton County. Guess what? That's a crime.
My name is Karen Pachuta. I am the attorney for the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. It's just retained on Monday. You've probably seen me here before, though. Our office, government clients, and I usually handle all the election offices. So I have been here before. With this case, we do admit that all three of the registrants that were in Fulton County appear to not be citizens. One of them was registered in 2013. The other two were in 2017. None of them have a voting history. Since that time, the system has changed immensely, and especially with Jarvis. Now, there's more affirmative steps that have to be taken, that they have checked yes to everything, including that they are a U.S. citizen. And also you upload basically the proof of their citizenship. So since then, not only has the state enhanced its procedures and the procedure with Jarvis. Also, the standard operating procedures are newer than they were in 2013 and 2017. You should have received an email yesterday. That packet does include a copy of that portion of Fulton's operating procedures and the steps that registration officials take to verify all the information, to make sure that they are not already registered with their driver's license or other information, and also to include the citizenship information.
Well, isn't that interesting? So you're telling me that at least 3 that they were able to find were not citizens. They were allowed to register, even if they didn't vote. That gives us at least a baseline to conclude that perhaps, despite how safe and secure the election is in Georgia, that perhaps we should look, which is exactly what Harmeet Dillon and the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice have been attempting to do. But for some reason, Georgia doesn't want to hand over that information. Well, she says that nobody voted, but we also have a person testifying here, an official from DeKalb County, not Fulton County, who admits that there was also a non-citizen on their rolls who voted for over 20 years in the state of Georgia. My Lord. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
He indicated that he was a U.S. citizen on his voter registration card. That was a registration.
And now I also want to harp on this because Karen Pachuta, she mentioned that they check to make sure that they're a citizen. The only check, even now, is the affirmative response that, yes, I am a citizen. It's the honor system, okay, which is how this individual in DeKalb County was able to not only register to vote, but also to vote on numerous occasions.
Registration that came in by mail. And I guess I should say, with respect to voter Jones, also, he voted in, he registered in October of 96, and he voted in numerous elections from 1998 through 2018. And I believe it was when he
11 times, right?
I don't know the exact number. I don't have that right here in front of me, but I know he voted in elections from 1998 through 2018. And I think he did go for jury duty, said he was a permanent resident. He was not a citizen, and then stopped voting after that, is my understanding. With the next voter, Hane,
all right. So again, where there's one, it is likely that there is more. So we have multiple crimes proven in multiple jurisdictions. There is no reason we shouldn't continue to keep looking and see what the hell is going on in Fulton County. Now, I have a very interesting clip I'm going to play for you from John Solomon. He appeared with Dan Bongino yesterday, and what John has to say is particularly interesting. Before we do that, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, banks can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your own money. They can do it overnight. They don't protect you. Banks control you. And this is why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So introducing the Rumble Wallet, it's a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. Because with Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy cryptocurrency or digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold. That is real gold on the blockchain. And through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars. Each one is allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. It's real physical gold without bank vaults, without storage fees or gatekeepers. And you can buy, sell, or move it around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when those traditional gold markets are closed. And if you even want, you can get that physical gold. Tether Gold can be redeemed, and they will actually send you physical gold bars, just like this. That is power. And when you support content creators on Rumble, like myself or others, you can tip them directly using that Rumble wallet. It's peer-to-peer. It's outside the banking system. There's no permission, no middlemen, no cancel button. The wallet is yours forever. So if you want to try it out, highly recommend it. You can use wallet.rumble.com. You can use that QR code on screen, or you can download it right from the App Store on your device. Available in both Apple and Android. Thank you also to No Thanks Joe, who says Rob Pitts is the one filing the lawsuit. And according to Robert Gouveia, report from yesterday that Georgia state law states it must contain the Board of Elections voting approvals. God bless. Yes, don't have any of that, of course. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. No thanks, Joe. Says, thanks, Lisa and Zach. Happy Wednesday to you both. Great reporting as usual. God bless. Be safe. Be safe as well, my friend. Thank you to Sean Joe and 123SKG and Big Mamu for the cookies. Filter Dog also says, NYC Mayor Zoran Mamdani plans to cancel 5,000 NYPD hires and cut the department's budget to help close the city's deficit. And what is that going to do? It's just going to make for more crime. I also saw a video of some woman walking on the street in New York, and literally the whole sidewalk was just covered in human feces. I guess it could be dog feces, but it was just shit. It was just shit everywhere. She was like, I've never seen anything like this. It's disgusting. And it's only since Zoran Mamdani came into power. Sean Joe, thank you for the can as well. All right, let's take a listen to to John Solomon. So John Solomon made this prediction, essentially that President Trump very soon is going to play the Trump card, meaning that he is going to unveil evidence to America, to the Senate. Essentially, this evidence will force John Thune to play ball and ensure that the SAVE Act gets passed. And that way, we will have voter ID. We'll also have criminal penalties for the registration of people who are not citizens or who otherwise do not have the legal right to vote. Take a listen to John Solomon.
Now we have a bunch of lazy senators who want to threaten the filibuster and not get off their feet and talk and really represent the people and stand for what they believe in. And all the American people are asking John Thune to do is to restore the Senate to the way it used to work before Mitch McConnell's lazy filibuster ideas kind of came into play. And I think that the American people are going to be there. Here's what I think is going to happen, Dan. And I think you probably know some of this because you had a foresight into some of the things that the Bureau now knows that was kept from the American public. I think Donald Trump is going to change the narrative in America. I think he's going to change some senators' minds, and he's going to do it by revealing some of the things that Chris Wray and that Chris Krebs and other major officials who were in charge of the integrity of our elections and who told us it was a perfect election in 2020. He's going to start revealing some of the intelligence that was kept from the American people. And we're going to see that our foreign adversaries have monkeyed with our system more than we knew, more than those driver's licenses coming into Chicago that you helped get all of us to understand about a few months ago, about China sending fake driver's licenses to help Joe Biden in. There are going to be significant efforts by foreign powers, some friends, some enemies, that were trying to meddle in the system, and they got pretty far down that path. And I think when senators realized their state could have been targeted, when senators realized that the intention of the identities of some of their voters might have been assumed, I think there's going to be a different debate in America. And I think if the president takes the time to educate people and show them that maybe the stories we got from the last leadership weren't true, I think he's going to pick off the votes. And then the American people are going to put some pressure on John Thune, and they're going to surgically implant a stiff back, and he's going to change that filibuster for this particular thing, make it a standing filibuster, make the Democrats talk till they drop, and then we'll get a vote in the summer. But I think there's some big, significant, and very troubling revelations about the vulnerabilities of our elections that the president is about to unveil on the American public.
I mean, personally, I don't know why this hasn't happened already. This is something that you and we've been aware of this for a very long time. If the senators really don't know, or if they're just playing dumb because it hasn't been stated publicly, like, let's get the information out there. I'm still waiting for Tulsi Gabbard's report to come out because I think that that's going to be undeniable. We need to have a uniformity among all of the important federal agencies that deal with national security issues coming forward and saying, yes, in fact, everything that people like Zak Paine or you in the audience have been saying for all of these years is true. Our elections are not safe. Our elections are not secure. And it doesn't matter the jurisdiction. Doesn't matter if it's a red or a blue state. Doesn't matter anywhere it is in the United States. We do not have election security. This must be addressed if the United States of America is going to trust the elections that we are going to be holding. Now, we're going to transition to the state of Maine. Do you guys remember the Lewiston shooting? It was a guy that, in my opinion, it was some MK Ultra type stuff. He was a veteran and he was hearing voices, and he went to, I believe it was a bowling alley, and he shot and killed a bunch of people. The city leaders, the government of Lewiston, Maine, they went on a fundraising spree, and they raised many, many millions of dollars. And that those millions of dollars were supposed to be used to help the survivors of that shooting be able to pay their bills, keep their houses. A lot of people obviously were pretty severely injured. They were unable to work. Well, it turns out that those city leaders and managers that handled that money, they ended up funneling it into a bunch of left-wing DEI green energy causes. A lot of it went to the migrants, the Somali migrants that came to the state of Maine. And so Lewiston, Maine has been a place where you've got a lot of patriots coming forward and demanding that something be done different. We're going to hear a public comment at a local meeting from a shooting victim. He's a guy who he was shot 5 times, and he confronts the city leaders directly about what happened to that money. And they try to shut him up. They tried to stop him from speaking, and it's pretty wild. Let's take a listen.
Benjamin Dyer, Harbor, Maine, Lewiston survivor. I was shot 5 times that night. I lost my finger. I lost my bicep, my tricep. You guys can't hide it. You can't miss it. Don't look away. Councilor Harriman, please look. Don't look away. That's disrespect.
Excuse me.
Counselor,
I have looked.
Counselor, you have not been recognized. Counselor,
focus on what the man is saying.
counselor has been recognized.
If you could please not police
stop.
what I do with my body.
Counselor.
I looked, and now I am listening.
Counselor Harriman, you are out of order. Thank you. No, we're not recognizing anybody right now. We're at public comment. Please continue, sir. I spent 19 days in the hospital. When your foundations that you guys set up for fundraising, I wasn't part of it because I was still in that hospital bed fighting for my life. So when you hear, oh, you guys were talked to, wrong. I spent 18 months out of work because of this situation. I went back to work because disability payments don't cover your mortgage. Just because I was shot, still needed to heat the house, still needed to feed the family, still needed to pay a mortgage to have a place to live. The money you guys raised is missing. And I say you guys, or the community. Everybody was out there and proud. We're raising all this money, national news, woohoo! When the time comes, where'd the money go? All I'm asking is you take the time, review the wrong, and do the right. The simplest part of this is we teach our children not to lie, because one little lie grows into a big one. Well, guess what? Right the ship. Because if you're the captain mayor, you're not carrying 5-gallon pails in your boat telling all of your council members to keep bailing that way. What you're going to do is you're going to stop the ship, you're going to bring it to port, and you're going to have it fixed. And that's all that we're asking for. The survivors, the families, the heirs to the deceased. Because you can sit and name them all you want and publicize it and have a yearly parade through town like we're heroes. We're not. We're individuals that are just asking for accountability and support. And guess what? We don't get it. All we're asking for.
Pretty incredible that every single time money comes into the conversation, you've got a left-wing nonprofit or a foundation that simply runs off with it. They funnel it into their own pet projects. And I wonder how many of those people on that board ended up with a windfall as a result of it. Certainly none of it went to these people, and there's been no explanation of it. Now, also in the state of Maine, another issue that we've spoken about
playing out all across Maine
on numerous occasions are the illegal Chinese marijuana grows, which are all over the place. So what the Chinese gangs do is they come into Maine, in rural Maine, and they buy a house in a neighborhood, and then they run an illegal marijuana grow op out of it. They will pollute the land because they've got fertilizer and chemicals and stuff that they'll dump all over the place. They'll sometimes take other people's electricity. Obviously, you've got people living in quiet areas who now suddenly have all of this activity going on. And this has been something that reporters in Maine have been attempting to get the state government to address for some time. But again, much like everything else, they're in on the grift, and so nothing happens. But now the FBI is involved, and Governor Janet Mills is, in my opinion, getting a little nervous. Her brother is involved in this. She's directly involved in it, and now a lot of these ops are getting shut down.
Go this one, front one. It's a scene playing out all across Maine, inside rural homes like this one. Sheriffs executing search warrants, finding massive pot farms inside with hundreds, sometimes thousands of marijuana plants. But it's bigger than just weed.
Human trafficking, money laundering, mortgage fraud.
In July, the feds indicted 7 Chinese nationals charged for alleged roles in multi-million-dollar money laundering, alien smuggling, and drug trafficking.
They're all Chinese, and they seem very well organized. I mean, if they were growing tomatoes, they'd corner the market.
Al Tempesta is the building and code inspector for 5 towns.
They'd corner the market. I love the accent.
In rural Maine. He inspects these homes.
Every town has at least 2 or 3.
Every town has at least 2.
Yes. The more rural you get, the more you'll have. They're everywhere.
Tempesta shows us what he says are the telltale signs of an illegal marijuana grow. Blacked out windows and an additional power box added.
This greenhouse here on your left was a grow, and we had the power disconnected from this due to the wiring.
Here in Corinna, Maine, officials found 3,700 marijuana plants inside this Chinese illegal grow. And here's the thing, it's 50 yards away from the town offices. If you look at the Maine real estate transfer tax document on this house, a document obtained by the Maine Wire, it shows it was gifted to a person living in China. The preparer listed on the transfer documents is Paul Mills, a real estate attorney and the eldest brother of Governor Janet Mills. We asked Paul Mills. He said he had no knowledge of what was happening on property.
The broker I worked with in some Farmington real estate transactions, and she said she had this person that wanted to convey this to her mother. And so that's the total limit of my involvement whatsoever in the whole thing. Didn't know anything about what was going on with the property.
Authorities say most of these Chinese nationals caught running illicit grows are now applying for and readily receiving licenses to grow medical marijuana. The state's director of marijuana policy, John Hudak, admitted it's a major issue.
They are not applying to our medical program to come out of the shadows and into the light. They're coming out, they're applying so they can have a get out of jail free card.
Steve Robinson, executive editor of the Maine Wire, says this building epitomizes what's happening here in Maine.
This is a massive cannabis growing facility. The state police have responded here 6 times for missing persons reports, trying to help the New York Police Department find people reported missing, hostage situations, armed robberies, and the state police, in their own incident report as early as 2021, said that this facility was controlled by Chinese gangs from New York.
Does it make you mad?
Well, yeah, it does, because there could be a family in this house.
Right.
You know, they bought it and they've used it, and I'd be willing to bet the inside is full of mold. And as you can see, the driveway wasn't plowed, they've just left.
Now, Senator Susan Collins, as we heard, is demanding federal help. We've reached out to the FBI. They would not speak to us on the record, but acknowledge the issue. Governor Janet Mills, meantime, hasn't said much on this publicly at all.
And why would she? Because she's largely been one of the people profiting off of it. Obviously, her brother is involved with the real estate transactions. We've spoken about this particular issue on a number of occasions. First time we've gotten a chance to look inside and actually see these houses. But as was mentioned, it would be one thing if it was just weed, all right? And they have a legal pathway for people to grow weed and to provide it for medical purposes. The problem is that these are Chinese gangs living in China, sending criminals here to the United States of America. When they get here, the weed is just a small part of it. There's other drugs that are involved. There's human trafficking. There's murders, missing people, kidnappings, et cetera, et cetera. Now, also in the state of Maine, as mentioned on many different occasions, you have a huge Somali population. The FBI is currently working with ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, doing a series of operations there. Shenna Bellows is a politician there in Maine, and in this public meeting, she completely gives away the plot. She's been talking recently about the residents of Maine who are afraid to go out of their house because of ICE. And she mentions that there's some things that should concern everybody. If you're afraid to leave your house because of ICE, you're afraid to leave to go to work, but you also might be afraid to go vote. Well, hold on a second. The only people who should be afraid of ICE are illegal aliens. And illegal aliens can't vote, Shenna. Let's go ahead and hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
I think the greater concern, what we saw with the recent ICE surge, was people, and I know many of you were involved in the mutual aid networks of support, we saw people afraid to go to work, afraid to go to school. Absenteeism in the greater Portland school districts was over 20%. We saw people afraid to go get groceries. And so my concern becomes, if you're afraid to go to work, you're going to be afraid to go to vote. And so then that's absentee voting, protected by Maine Voices, Maine Votes, and constructed over years. You know, we have 30 days of no excuse absentee voting. People can call their clerk and get their ballot. They can go online and request it and have it mailed to them. They can make arrangements to get their ballot in other ways, or they could go in person to the clerk's office early.
Now,
I think the great
just like in many other states, Maine is working on the honor system. Okay, they also give driver's licenses to illegals, which of course is going to then get them registered to vote. You can't vote if you're an illegal alien. Maine is also one of those states that is refusing to hand over their voter rolls so that the DOJ can scrub them against illegal aliens. Now, here's an example of a rather sophisticated scam that was taking place in Louisville, Kentucky. Much like scams exactly like this we spoke about down here in Florida and a couple of other states, you had people working at the Department of Motor Vehicles. They were directly working with illegal aliens to funnel other illegals into these particular DMVs where the rats would be working, and then they would essentially ensure that these people got their driver's license, and then that allows them all of the rights and privileges of a citizen of the United States of America. Now, this indictment was returned by a federal grand jury on the 4th. It accuses this group of committing fraud, money laundering, and producing unlawful identification documents. You've got Danita Wilson, 32 years old, Ariel Matthews, 27, Raul Tellez Ojeda, 32, Lazaro Alejandro Castelo Rojas, 37, Robert Danger Correa, 41. All of them face a total of 14 counts each of mail fraud, honest services mail fraud, and unlawful production of identification documents, along with conspiracy charges for mail fraud, honest services mail fraud, and money laundering. So Wilson and Matthews were temporary contract employees. They were assigned to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's Division of Driver's Licensing, primarily working at the NIA Center branch in Louisville. The three men, who had no official role in the licensing process, allegedly recruited legally present non-U.S. citizens, many of whom struggled with English and the application process. They would promise them expedited services for fees that would be paid ranging from $200 to $1,500. Now, the indictment said the scheme operated from at least November of 2023 all the way through October of 24. The recruiters would arrange appointments. They would escort applicants to the NIA Center. They would direct them to specific encounters, which would be manned by Wilson and Matthews. The employees then allegedly manipulated the state database. They would alter records to issue duplicate licenses without the applicants ever taking the required written or road tests, meaning that no one ever demonstrated they had the ability to safely drive a motor vehicle or would be able to read the road signs or understand the laws on American roads. This obviously compromises road safety, but it also undermines the integrity of state-issued IDs, which can be used for a lot of different things like banking, housing, travel, and in some cases, voter registration. So U.S. Attorney Kyle Baumgartner said in a statement that was obtained that this fraudulent scheme involved kickbacks and bribes, leading to numerous legally present non-U.S. citizens obtaining unlawfully issued driver's licenses. The operation came to light, thank God, thanks to a whistleblower lawsuit that was filed in 2025 by a former clerk at KYTC. They allege that colleagues were selling licenses to illegal aliens for money. The indictment specifies the applicants were legally present, but the initial allegations raised concerns about the broader issue of illegal immigrants, prompting an investigation by the Kentucky State Police, the AG's office, and federal partners. Now, if these guys are convicted, they're going to face significant prison time. Here also is Dr. Oz. Last week, we told you about the recent Medicare data that was released by the government, allowing the Patriot community and the Anon community to sort of crowdsource the data and take a look and identify where various pieces of fraud are taking place. With specific regard to Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, Dr. Oz points out some individual discrepancies that he's noticed since the investigation began. But he says Medicaid fraud is estimated at this time, and it's very early, to be at $100 billion. I believe that's on a yearly basis. Let's take a listen to Dr. Oz.
How big do you estimate the Medicaid fraud to be?
$100 billion. $100 billion. That money should go back to making the Medicare trust fund solvent for many years. It should go back to providing adequate, high-quality services for mental health conditions. It should allow us to take better care of people in rural parts of the country, underserved parts of the country. But we look at numbers now, like in Southern California, where you have a 7-fold increase in hospice. It doesn't make any sense. I think 30% of hospice in the entire country must be down there. I sent a letter to our good friend, Governor Newsom, concerned about the massive increase in home health care in California, where literally $1 in $10 spent in the entire country in home health care is in LA, not California, LA. It should be a third of that. And I went after it because I know this is the same organized criminal efforts. By the way, these are not accidents. These are often foreign nationals. We've got Russians in California who fled back to Russia when they got indicted. We have Cuban-run strings, which we believe the Cuban government's involved in, with durable medical equipment. That's the people who sell you wheelchairs and canes. Listen to this. That's going to blow your mind. There are 20 times more durable medical equipment providers in South Florida than McDonald's. You need 20 times more wheelchairs than burgers. It's just bizarre. I mean, how could you? And you have to, again, almost not be looking. We have more personal care services in New York, I mentioned, than retail. I mean, it's just way beyond what you'd imagine.
So yes, $100 billion is very conservative. That represents only what the government has been able to identify thus far. But as you all know, the investigation continues, and Patriots Online are finding more and more every single day. Now, we have some good news coming out of Minnesota. Caroline Levitt, I keep wanting to say Kayleigh McEnany. Caroline Levitt, earlier today during a presser at the White House, has announced that due to the efforts of Tom Homan and the revised tactics that they've been using in Minnesota, now virtually 100% of the counties in Minnesota are notifying ICE when a criminal illegal alien is in their custody and is set to be released, so that ICE can arrive at the jail, apprehend them, and then get them the hell out of here. Otherwise, normally in the past, these people would have went right back out into the community, ready to reoffend, ready to victimize, perhaps kill Americans, and now we can avoid that.
Yeah, the last time I spoke with Mr. Homan, which was just a few days ago, he assured us that nearly every single county in the state of Minnesota has agreed to notify ICE when they are releasing criminal.
So, Alan, he was only referring to California. There was specifically Russian and Armenian gangs in California. They identified the Russians. They immediately left. But obviously, he was just saying that to make a point. He wasn't only trying to say that Russia is the only place doing this.
illegal aliens from their jails. This is an unprecedented level of cooperation that we have not seen. It has led to not only cooperation to detain illegal aliens in Minnesota, which just this past week, I have looked at the list. They've detained some very heinous people who none of you would want living in your communities, but has also led to a much more calm situation on the ground. We've also seen, and you've seen this with your own eyes play out, the local police and the state police have now cooperated in the arrests of left-wing agitators and criminals who are unlawfully obstructing immigration enforcement in their efforts. So this is a huge win. And again, the president sent Mr. Homan to Minnesota to do a job, and he has done it well. And I think the situation on the ground proves that. Yeah.
So yeah, once again, Greg Bovino was the heavy hand that came in to kind of soften Minnesota up. And then President Trump sent Tom Homan. This is almost like the battered women syndrome kind of thing. You know, people who are in bad relationships, they may be getting abused. They get beat up. They get kind of knocked around. And then their abuser will come back and like, oh, honey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I love you so much. And that's why people end up sticking around in a bad situation. Kind of used the same tactic on Minnesota. Greg Bovino came in, he was heavy-handed, and then Tom Homan comes in, and they're like, oh, thank God, we'll do whatever you want. And so there you go. We got what we wanted in the very first place. President Trump initially said, all I want is for you to tell me when you're going to release these people. And now they're doing exactly what he wanted them to do. All right, now I didn't even talk about this, but AOC went to the Munich Security Conference and she made a total ass of herself. She made it very obvious that she knows next to nothing about foreign policy. She was asked quite a few questions about very pertinent things that you would need to have a baseline understanding of if you were going to be running for elected office at the national level. She's obviously a representative. It's been rumored that she might be running for the Senate. That's a higher level than the House, so you have more responsibility. You're responsible for more people. You're responsible for different types of decisions. Obviously, there's all kinds of committee assignments, but people in the left-wing spheres have also been floating AOC as a possible presidential candidate. After her appearance and crash and burn in Germany, I think that that's probably a bit of a pipe dream at this point. She delivered what many people saw as a humiliating performance, probably the most humiliating performance by a politician in modern history, certainly at the Munich Security Conference, if not ever in the history of global conferences. She made a series of mind-boggling gaffes in response to fairly simple questions. She also showed a dramatic lack of understanding of basic geography. In one instance, a moderator asked if the U.S. should commit troops to defend against China, and she turned into a stuttering mess. She said, I think that this is such a, I think this is a, this is, of course, a very long-standing policy of the United States. I think that what we are hoping for is we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving all of our economic research and global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise. And then in another instance, this is where she showed a lack of geographical understanding. She said that Venezuela was in the southern hemisphere, below the equator. It's actually very much above the equator. Technically, it's in the northern hemisphere, and it's not even close. I mean, there's not even like a portion of Venezuela that's in the southern hemisphere. And then after she got back and she saw that everybody was making fun of her, talking shit, writing all of these articles about her abject stupidity. They don't call her Alexandria Occasional Cortex for nothing, or I don't call her Alexandria Occasional Cortex for nothing. She gets home and she calls the New York Times, and she basically demands that the New York Times write the story that she wants them to write. And essentially, she was like, everybody's getting this wrong. This is what you need to say. And so that propaganda journalist for the New York Times wrote that puff piece. This reporter came up to me and was like, is Munich the new New Hampshire? And I cannot say enough how out of touch and missing the point genuinely that is, she said. Global democracies are on fire the world over, and established parties are falling to right-wing populist movements. And then she complained about all of the clips going viral of her. She said, any 5 to 10 second thing only serves to distract from the substance of what I am saying. The funny part is that the clips were the substance of what she was saying. There were so many non-verbiage words that were used in there, just pauses and ums and ahs and ifs and buts. She couldn't get anything out of her. So essentially, the New York Times, they just did Alexandria Occasional Cortex's bidding, and it was exactly what you expect. Lee Walden says, AOC, she's as dumb as a rock or plays one on TV. Your guess is as good as mine. Either way, she's still a rock. She's got rocks for brains, certainly. Now, Elizabeth Slotkin, after the grand jury in D.C. declined to indict her and the other 5 in the seditious 6, she must have been feeling some level of impunity when she went there, because she did not disappoint when speaking about President Trump and the state of the United States. She says, as I would expect her to, that Trump is exercising authoritarianism here in the U.S. She also accused him of planning to steal the 2026 election, and she says that she expects Americans to revolt, essentially. Let me see if I can get the clip here, and we'll see what she said. That is the original Seditious 6 clip. This is her committing more acts of sedition. I mean, telling Americans to revolt, I feel like that's pretty blatant. Looks like maybe
at the back there, please.
I have a question to Senator Slotkin, Łukasz Pawłowski, Polish MFA. You said that U.S. society is going through something and that it is going to hit the rock bottom before it comes back up. Would you care to define what the rock bottom is?
So let us start with Senator Slotkin, please.
Sure. I mean, look, I think I'm sitting in a room full of people who come from active democracies. Some of you have fought very hard for your democracies. We are not a democracy. We are a republic. She's also sitting in a room full of unelected bureaucrats and globalist New World Order adherents. The citizens of the United States of America are not the citizens of Europe. The security of Europe would not exist were it not for this republic that Alyssa Slotkin appears to have such disdain for. President Trump's actions are not authoritarian. They are not dictatorial. They are merely in the best interests of the United States of America. And the best interests of the United States of America sometimes do not align with unelected European bureaucrats. There's a reason we, the people, broke away from Europe 250 plus years ago when our founding fathers decided to sign the Declaration of Independence. We didn't want to be part of Europe. We wanted to strike out on our own. We wanted to create a new form of government. We didn't want to be beholden to a monarchy or even to the church. We wanted to worship in the way that we felt was best, based upon freedom to do so. We didn't need to be told that if we didn't follow the dictates of any monarchy or any pope or whomever it was, that we would face criminal retribution. And right now, President Trump is merely working to enforce the laws that have for a very long time been completely ignored. Alyssa Slotkin is a spook. In a struggle for our democracy. It's not the first time in our 250 years, but it is certainly the most real one of my lifetime. And I think what we're seeing happen right now is as things deteriorate, for instance, in Minneapolis, right? It is hitting something in the American consciousness, a sort of barometer for authoritarianism that they instinctively look at and don't like. Now, because of confusion over years on what media source to listen to, what political party you come from, people are very, they're very unsure about what they read. But when they see it with their own eyes, that is something fundamentally different. And that's why you just saw President Trump very quietly slink out of Minneapolis, because he understands it is just deeply unpopular, not just with Democrats, but with independents, Republicans, and people of all stripes. The more he overplays that authoritarianism, the more people can see it with their own eyes, the more they say, look, I voted for him because I wanted a better economy. I thought we would get it that way, but I didn't.
I actually voted for him not only for the economy, but so that we would have actions like what we've seen in Minnesota. Also, I wanted to arrest and I wanted to deport every single illegal alien in the United States of America. And I am perfectly comfortable re-immigrating many people who may have legal status, but who don't identify with the foundations and principles of the United States of America. If you come to the United States of America and you don't identify as an American, then what the hell are you doing here? Get out. You don't need to be here. Alyssa Slotkin seems to be living in a very different world because everything she's describing it's the exact opposite of what we're seeing. You know, President Trump didn't slink out of Minnesota. President Trump got Minnesota to kneel. President Trump achieved the capitulation that was necessary so that ICE could do their jobs, so that cops could be cops, and so that we could get rid of those violent, criminal, illegal aliens. Now, she also said, you know, as things deteriorate, nothing is deteriorating. Take a look at this. This is also from Maine. I thought that this was pretty awesome. Steve Robinson is the founder of the Maine Wire. He's also a journalist that was featured in that piece about the illegal Chinese grow ops. So Lewiston has been a hub of these migrants, all right? Now, you can see here from 2019 to 2025, 6 years, Lewiston was a hotbed for shootings of all types, all right? So this is a heat map of everywhere those shootings happened. Here is the heat map since ICE came in and started arresting people. You haven't had a single shooting. Nobody's out there on the streets. You know what that tells me? That tells me the people they're coming to arrest are the people who would otherwise be out there committing crimes, doing the shootings, putting people's lives in jeopardy. So, no, nothing is deteriorating. The only thing that's deteriorating is the hold the deep state had on the United States of America. Also, you know, this right here is a perfect example of what we're trying to stop. Trans-Tifa terrorism. Now, this is a little bit of a disturbing revelation, but it's not the end of the road. It's just merely a stumbling block. In Fort Worth, Texas, the first day of the very first Antifa terrorism trial was set to begin this week. However, the judge was forced to declare a mistrial on the very first day. Every one of these trans-Tifa activists that took part in the terrorist shooting at the ICE facility where an ICE agent was shot in the neck. There would be more, but a couple other ones were shot in the head by ICE agents as they successfully defended their positions. The trial was set to begin. Jury selection was going on, and one of the woke attorneys for these trans-Tifa terrorists wore a politically charged shirt into the courtroom. So the U.S. District Judge Mark Pittman stopped jury selection after he noticed Marquetta Clayton, who is a BLM activist and a lawyer for one of the defendants, also running to become a judge in this same area. She was wearing a shirt that had images of Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights activists on it. But Judge Pittman said your clothing could prejudice jurors. His ruling came on this first day of jury selection, weeks after the 9 federal defendants were indicted on charges stemming from that attack I mentioned on July 4th of last year at the Prairieland ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas. There was a riot. Local police intervened, and there was an organized attack by these trans-Tifa activists. One of the defendants escaped. There was a manhunt for a number of weeks. This is Marquetta Clayton right here, and I believe this is the shirt that she was wearing. Get your knee off our necks. And you can see it's got Al Sharpton, George Floyd, Martin Luther King Jr., and I don't remember this guy. I believe he was a politician. I think he died rather recently. Anyways, he said, I don't know why in the world you'd think that shirt's appropriate. And he said that wearing that shirt would be akin to the prosecution wearing a shirt with Donald Trump riding an eagle with an ice flag flying over his head. It could immediately bias or intimidate the jurors towards a political view. He said, I've never declared a mistrial, but I'm going to do it today. So this, again, is just a stepping stone, a mere stumbling block. And the trial is now set to begin on February 23rd. So it is continuing, but she's going to have to learn her lesson. Something tells me she knows exactly what she was doing on that day. All right. Now, I've also got a clip for you here of Kash Patel appearing on Dan Bongino's program. Kash is obviously now reunited with his now former number 2 at the DOJ. This is in relation to the funding networks behind the trans-Tifa terrorists. And although we don't have an announcement relating to anybody who's being indicted, Kash says that we are very close to making our announcements on what we found.
We're going to look at the facts that exist. We're not going to try to make up facts that don't so we can serve a political narrative. And wait till you, and I know you know this, but wait till you see what's coming in the next month or two on the funding streams related to this. You and I had launched a serious investigation. We had said these organizations don't operate alone, don't operate in silence. They operate with a heavy, heavy stream of funding. And we started looking into it. And guess what, Dan? We found them.
Director, your thoughts on this? I covered earlier.
We found him. Okay, so that can only mean that indictments are coming, investigations are ongoing. Once the funding sources would be identified
in the show,
they would get warrants to monitor their communications. They would want to see them committing additional crimes. And then, of course, they've got to fully track that funding network and see just how far out it goes. Investigations do take time. But, guys, I'm ready. I think we're all ready to see this go down. All right. Now, I also have an update on a 764 defendant from our friend BX on X. She says that a federal court has denied an appeal by 764 child exploitation network founder Bradley Cadenhead. He wanted to reopening his sentencing for review. He was sentenced to 80 years in prison, and he's only 18 years old. But he played a significant role in 764. What's fascinating about this case is that his crimes were so severe that the prosecutors included a warning letter at the top of his case file so that any future courts or parole boards that might be looking at his case in the future would know exactly what type of guy this is. You can see here that the message is that this defendant is dangerous. Attention parole authorities. Now, his offense was possession with intent to promote child pornography, 9 counts. Attention parole authorities, prior to or upon consideration of this defendant for release on parole, please contact the undersigned district attorney's office to arrange a review of the video and photographic evidence recovered from the defendant. The evidence depicts child pornography, but it also includes video and photographic material reflecting the defendant's interest in and fascination with and proclivity for infant murder and sexual assault, child mutilation, torture, and death, and human self-mutilation. This defendant is dangerous. I can't tell you how happy that makes me, because it's often something that you hear about. Somebody commits a very heinous crime, and then at some point in the future, after they've been in prison for a couple of decades, they go before a liberal parole board, and maybe they completely, oh, what happened? Maybe they ignore, my God. My desk was not working. It quit working. Yeah, Dan looks a little tired, don't you think? He seems a little defeated after coming home. Whoa. So I don't know what's going on with my desk, y'all. It's yeah, I don't have any problem with Dan's show, but I just think he looks tired. It just seems like it. All right, continuing. We have a new report from James O'Keefe and O'Keefe Media Group. Apparently, they traveled to Stockholm, Sweden, so that they could infiltrate an Antifa group that is operating out of there. Now, this group has already been designated as a transnational criminal terrorist organization by the federal government of the United States. What's funny is that he pretended to be Muslim. So he disguised himself as a Muslim. He went to Stockholm, Sweden, and he was able to gain access to areas that journalists and tourists are generally not able to get into, which gives them access to investigate these Antifa networks and see how they organize and how they operate. He said, we went to Riks headquarters in Stockholm, an alternative media organization labeled a national security threat by Swedish officials. Citizen journalist Christian Peterson guided me through some of Stockholm's most dangerous neighborhoods. I was able to get into Cyclopen and Antifa headquarters by posing as Muslim. I was welcomed inside and I was given a tour inside the building. They could not turn me away because I said I was Muslim. Moments after we entered, the heavy iron door shut behind us. Carrying a hidden camera, my team and I grew nervous as the members said they needed to determine whether we were committed to the cause before gaining further access. Antifa symbols appeared throughout the building. Members of Cyclopen took O'Keefe on a tour of their cultural house. F-ICE, James said, in an effort to blend in with the leftists. This is a 20-minute report, but we're going to go ahead and watch the introduction here, and then I would just encourage everyone here to go back and watch the whole report yourself.
We're at the Rinkeby Torg, which means...
Sorry, it's 30-minute report.
Center in Swedish.
This place is called Little Mogadishu.
We're going to buy a kamis, stylish in... No. Stockholm. I am wearing a chamis in Stockholm. I look like a chef, like a Swedish chef. So we're on Rinkeby Street in Stockholm, and there's actually a daycare facility right over there.
We have a pod room, but I don't think...
And music studio.
And music studio, yes. And it's totally taxpayer funded.
I'm wondering if I should go up to the Antifa house. It looks like killer clowns from outer space.
Oh my God.
Knocking on the Antifa house, the door of the Antifa house in Stockholm. Look at this place. Look at the light. They're spying on us right now. It's creepy. Listen. They're listening to us through the wall. You hear that?
Yeah.
They're in there. Right? Just a peek. We're in the Antifa house. We're in the Antifa house.
And we got hunted by like 10 masked people here.
Oh my God.
This one is for the boys with the boom.
Anyways, very interesting report. Highly recommend watching it. This is, something that most people don't ever get an opportunity to see. There was one other hidden camera report that I showed you maybe a year ago where some British undercover journalists got into an Antifa house and got an opportunity to walk around. That was pretty cool. But yeah, definitely something that I think everybody should watch. So great job, James O'Keefe, once again, on getting a report that nobody else could have gotten. I can't believe they didn't recognize him. That's so funny. All right, now we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, as we do. Seems to be a Jeffrey Epstein segment on every show. But Whoopi Goldberg has finally acknowledged that she is in the Epstein files. And, of course, she says that it means absolutely nothing. And what we really need to do is look at Donald Trump. Let's take a listen.
Now, in the name of transparency,
I should probably keep this. I got to make sure that I interrupt because I'm on YouTube and they will take the video down if I just play this all the way through.
My name is in the files. Yes.
Now, if you'll remember, because I reported on this a couple of weeks back, Whoopi Goldberg's name is in the files because one of Jeffrey Epstein's assistants was reached out to by Goldberg's organization. They were seeking the use of Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express. And she wanted to use it to go to some event because their original transportation had fallen through. And they specifically reached out to Jeffrey Epstein's team, which means that they knew he had a plane. They knew it might be possible for them to use it. And this is, of course, after Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender. It was in May of 2013.
What does it say? It says, Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco. John Lennon's charity, it should say Julian Lennon's charity, is paying for it. They don't want to charter, so they're looking for private owners. Here's the...
All right, so what are the questions that should be asked of Whoopi Goldberg? Well, how was it that you came to reach out to Jeffrey Epstein's team? Were you aware of Jeffrey Epstein? You must have been, because you reached out to him specifically to see if you could use his plane to go to Monaco. So why was it you reached out to him? Did you not know that he was a convicted sex offender? Tend to think you did.
Info. And they give all the information, and they're saying, do you want to offer your G2? Okay.
And it looks like they said no thanks.
Yeah.
So in other words,
yes, and Jeffrey Epstein said, I'm good. He did not care to lend his jet to Whoopi Goldberg, which is so funny.
Anybody can be on this list. Well, this is my point, because I'm telling you, when I tell you people are trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
Yeah. You might not have been sleeping with Jeffrey Epstein, but why'd you reach out to a convicted pedophile to borrow his pedophile jet?
I was not only too old, but it was at a time, where this is...
Yeah, Lisa's right. You got to be a real piece of shit for Jeffrey Epstein to turn you down.
Just not... You used to have facts before said...
Well, these are the facts of the situation. Your team reached out to a convicted sex offender to borrow his plane. How did that happen?
But Trump is on the list 38,000 times.
Okay, Trump is mentioned by other people. He is not there in the context of somebody who actually went to Epstein's properties to abuse children like many of the other people. To be fair, Whoopi Goldberg isn't either. But it's a context that needs to be given.
Well, I can't speak to him, but I'm speaking about me because I'm getting dragged. People actually believe that I was with him. It's like, honey, come on. Yeah. Every man that I've ever been with, you've known about him because either the...
Well, okay, so she's not going to say anything of substance, but she would have you believe that she has now addressed the issue. Nobody thought that Whoopi Goldberg was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein because it never said that. What it says is that your team reached out to borrow his jet, and he was a sex offender. Emerald Dragon says, hey, Zach, another shooting in Rhode Island today at Lincoln Mall. No details yet, just shots fired and heavy police presence. Thanks for being awesome. That's awful. I guess pray for everybody there at Lincoln Mall. I would imagine it's probably going to be youth related because those are the people that go to the mall. All right. Now, we also have a story here related to the state of Israel and Jeffrey Epstein. So it turns out that the Israeli government installed and maintained a security system at Epstein's apartment. So that's a question that certainly is an interesting one to be asked and answered. Why is it that the Israeli government would install security equipment and then control the access at this Manhattan apartment building managed by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein? This is all according to a set of emails that was released by the Department of Justice in the records that have come out. They were installed starting in early 2016 at 301 East 66th Street. This is the residence where former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak would frequently stay for stretches of time. The security operation at Ehud Barak's apartment was in place for at least 2 years. We've got emails from the DOJ showing this. Officials from the Israeli Permanent Mission to the United Nations would also correspond regularly with Jeffrey Epstein's staff regarding security. This is a much cleaner and more obvious connection to Jeffrey Epstein and his operation than just about anything else we've seen. Of course, we've had insinuations of that, Ehud Barak being the former prime minister of Israel. Lots overrepresentation of Jewish individuals in the emails. Lots of talk about Goyim. But here we have the actual security apparatus of Israel communicating with Epstein's staff regarding the security operation they set up at this apartment. The apartment was technically owned by a company that was connected to Epstein's brother Mark, but was effectively controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. They had units in this building that were frequently loaned out to Jeffrey Epstein's contacts, and they would be used to house underage models. So you might be forgiven for saying that the state of Israel managed the security at an apartment building that Jeffrey Epstein would use to house trafficked girls. Rafi Shlomo, then director of protective services at the Israeli mission to the United Nations in New York, he was also head of Ehud Barak's security, corresponded with employees of Jeffrey Epstein to arrange meetings so they could discuss security and coordinate installation of specialized surveillance equipment at the 66th Street residence. Shlomo would personally control access to the apartment for guests and even conducted background checks on cleaners and Epstein's employees. Would he conduct background checks on the underage girls that Jeffrey Epstein would traffic and then house in this apartment building? You know, it makes it so much easier to cover your tracks when you own the entire building. No need to worry about nosy neighbors. You've basically got your friends that you're trafficking girls to, and then you've got all of the girls living in these apartments. The only people they're ever going to run into are other girls who are being trafficked or the men who are going to be abusing them. Under Israeli law, former prime ministers and other high-ranking officials typically receive security services after they leave office. Now, in these emails, Epstein personally approved the installation of the equipment, also personally authorized meetings between his staff and Israeli security. At the time of the death or removal of Epstein from the script, Ehud Barak downplayed his connection to Epstein, and he stated that while he had met with Epstein several times, he didn't support me or pay me. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently suggested that the close ties between Epstein and Ehud Barak, who was a longtime Labor Party official and a political rival of Benjamin Netanyahu, undermine rather than strengthen the case for Epstein's ties to Israel. I think he's wrong about that. I think he's 100% wrong about that, especially after learning that this was actually going on. But he said Jeffrey Epstein's unusual close relationship with Ehud Barak doesn't suggest Epstein worked for Israel. It proves the opposite. Stuck on his election loss from over 2 decades ago, Barak has for years obsessively attempted to undermine Israeli democracy by working with the anti-Zionist radical left in failed attempts to overthrow the elected Israeli government. Man, that is a stretch, Benjamin.
Sure, Jan.
Continuing. A January 2016 email exchange between Ehud Barak's wife, Nili Pirelli, and an employee of Jeffrey Epstein, whose name is partially redacted but appears from other communications to be Leslie Groff, discussed installing alarms and surveillance equipment at the residence, including 6 sensors sticked to the windows and the ability to remotely control access to the premises. Pirelli informed Epstein's staff that they can neutralize the system from afar before you need somebody to enter the apartment. The only thing to do is call Rafi from the consulate, which is, of course, the official Israeli diplomatic mission, and let him know who and when is entering. The correspondence also indicates that the work was done by the Israeli government, and it was significant enough that it required Epstein to personally approve it. Jeffrey says he does not mind holes in the walls, and this is all just fine, Leslie Groff wrote to Barak and Pirelli. You've got the email right here where she talks about these holes. The mission was also in regular touch with Epstein representatives over multiple visits by Barak and his wife in 2016 and 2017. In an email from January of 2017, Shlomo is written an email with the subject, Jeffrey Epstein regarding Ehud's apartment, and an Epstein assistant provided Israeli officials with a list of employees who would need access to the apartment, adding, I understand from you already have a copy of her ID from a while ago. She is the maid, and she's been going in and out of that apartment for a long time now. A few weeks later, they wrote to Epstein himself. Rafi, the head of Ehud Security, is asking if I could meet him at 4 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th at his office regarding Ehud's apartment. The correspondence continued throughout the year. In August, an assistant for Epstein reached out again to Shlomo to inform him of yet another stay by Barak and his wife at the Epstein residence. By November of 2017, Shlomo had been replaced by another Israeli official who also managed security and surveillance for Ehud Barak. The longtime friend and aide of Ehud Barak, Yoni Koren, they died in 2023, was another frequent guest at the 66th Street apartment owned by Epstein. Koren stayed at the apartment on multiple occasions, including in 2013 while he was still actively serving as bureau chief for the Israeli Ministry of Defense, according to calendars released by the House Oversight Committee investigation into Epstein and the emails. And email correspondence from Barak's inbox also showed Koren exchanging information with Epstein for a wire transfer, which is, of course, a payment of money. Absolutely stunning. We have, once again, just another clear-cut connection to another foreign government. All right. Now, remember yesterday I told you about the Alexander brothers. These three brothers are currently on trial in New York for sex trafficking, and their names came up in a release from the FBI as part of the Epstein files. The judge has barred the FBI from releasing anything further about these three brothers until they are either exonerated or convicted. But we got our hands on the actual document right here. And in this document, it details how a 16-year-old girl reached out to the FBI and said she was modeling when Jeffrey Epstein invited her to parties at his New York mansion. At one of these parties, he offered her $500 to take off her panties. He invited her to another party, and the twin brothers, Alan and Oren Alexander, lured both her and a friend upstairs, and then they locked the door. Now, she escaped, but Oren allegedly raped her best friend, and then the third brother, Tal, raped a 14-year-old girl who tried to slit her wrists afterwards. These three are currently on trial for federal sex trafficking, and we can see the document right here. So this report was taken August 8th of 2019, which is, suspiciously close to when Jeffrey Epstein was killed or removed. On such and such a date at such and such time, Eastern time, the witness whose identity is protected, her date of birth is given but is redacted, and her cellular number and home address are also redacted. She called the FBI National Threat Operations Center to report being sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein and other powerful men in New York. Witness provided the following information. She was modeling in 2015 at the age of 16 when she met Epstein. She attended one of these parties, it is redacted, at Epstein's residence in New York. During one of the parties, Epstein asked the witness to take a tour of this home. Once redacted, Epstein asked redacted to take off her panties. When she didn't comply, he said, "It's fine, I'll pay you $500. She then complied because she thought he was a very important person. In 2016, Epstein slid his fingers up her dress and sexually assaulted her. At one of the parties, the two twin brothers, Alan and Oren, who were involved in real estate, lured her and her friend to a room upstairs, locked it, and then trapped them, stopped the girls from going downstairs, and then they raped the friend. And then Oren's brother, Tal, raped the 14-year-old girl, and she tried to commit suicide. So, yeah, it's no wonder that the judge wants to make sure that nothing else comes out, because it seems like it's not like these guys were just tangentially connected to Epstein. They were fully part of his network. They were going to his parties and they were raping little girls right along with all of these other guys. It's also worth mentioning these guys have dual Israeli citizenship. So the fact that they were arrested and are actually on trial and weren't able to escape to run back to the motherland is really, really good. because there is a preponderance of men who have committed sex crimes here in the United States who have been allowed to fly back to Israel. And then, of course, there's no extradition with the United States. And those people end up being protected, and they're unable to be brought to justice. So I'm really glad to see that this is happening. All three of these guys are facing life in prison. All right. So, oh, yeah. And here is a picture of them in court. These are the twin brothers, Alan and Oren. And yeah, they're probably going to end up in prison. And then the final brother, Tal, is right here on the right. Very happy to see that that's going. All right. Now, we also now have word from UK police that there is a active new investigation into Stansted Airport, because Stansted Airport allegedly was used by Jeffrey Epstein to sex traffic young women into Britain. It would not surprise me if this was also used as a waypoint as Jeffrey Epstein came from Eastern Europe and then before making his way across the Atlantic and heading back into the United States. So it seems that there are many, many, many connections between Jeffrey Epstein and many different powerful people in the United Kingdom. So Essex police are assessing information about private flights coming and going from Stansted Airport after it was featured in the Epstein files. And this does appear to now be a criminal investigation. There are a number of different people who reported that Jeffrey Epstein was flying young girls through this airport. And it turns out that they've discovered at least 87 flights linked to Jeffrey Epstein and Stansted Airport between the 1990s and 2018. Now, what's interesting is that we had reported yesterday that former Prime Minister Gordon Brown was shown to have been linked to Jeffrey Epstein in a private meeting. Epstein said that he was going to be going to a meeting with Gordon Brown. We also know that Lord Peter Mandelson bragged to Jeffrey Epstein about convincing Gordon Brown to step down as prime minister. Gordon Brown, it would appear, while he was prime minister, reached out to police and said, we urgently need to re-examine whether Jeffrey Epstein victims were trafficked within and outside of the United Kingdom. And it turns out former Prime Minister Brown said the scale of trafficking would become apparent if an investigation is conducted into these flights. He added that Stansted, located around 40 miles away from central London, was one of the airports where women were transferred from one Epstein plane to another. Stansted Airport said all private aircraft use entirely independent terminals not operated by the people working at Stansted. So the airport does not manage or have any visibility of passenger arrangements on those privately operated aircraft, which means that this is a sex trafficker's dream. If you need to fly victims through an airport in UK, well, you just go ahead and use Stansted. Make sure you're flying a private flight like Jeffrey Epstein was, and nobody's going to be the wiser. So essentially, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown was fully aware that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking girls. He tried to do something about it. And then one of Jeffrey Epstein's closest confidants in the UK convinced him to step down and no longer be prime minister. That part. So we don't need to rehash it. Real quick, before we continue with this segment on Jeffrey Epstein, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, I want to give you an opportunity to do so. They have some of those starter kits available. In those kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and their vitality mushroom coffee that hits you with clean energy and laser focus, but not the crash. It's made from the highest quality beans you can get, single origin, small batch, toxin, and mold free. You're also going to get their gold spoon clip, a very strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. That is $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. It totally is. So you can find out by going to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Thank you very much to the good folks at Rumble. Thank you also to Emerald Dragon, who says, maybe it was two Utes. Two what? You know, two kids. Utes. Yeah, shit's going on in this little dark blue state these days. Governor is a real piece of work, as you would imagine. Absolutely. All right. Also, thank you to FilterDog1 says it's election day, period. So I know that early voting began, but I didn't know if it was like full election day. I mean, anyways, I know that every single state does a little bit differently. Don't know what the early voting is for every state. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. One Thunder, thank you for the cookie. Hogleg, thank you for the cookie. FilterDog says authoritarian, like when they wanted to force people to take the jab or they'd get put into camps. Yes, excellent point. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies as well. All right, so next on the docket is an email which appears to be a tip that came in to some journalists. This would have been after Jeffrey Epstein died in August of 2020. This is the grandson of a housekeeper who did work for Jeffrey Epstein for some time. She was fired, and when she was fired, she made sure to grab evidence of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. She took memory cards from the Manhattan home. Those memory cards contained photos, videos, and audio files. They also contained child sexual abuse material. First, they reached out to ABC News, but ABC News declined to report the story. Then they reached out to Fox. Fox was able to verify the authenticity and allegedly said they would publish part of it. Obviously, they're not going to publish the CSAM, but the family claims that they were pressured by lawyers to turn it over to Jeffrey Epstein's estate. Here, this, of course, kind of tickles my brain when thinking about the statements that were made about Jeffrey Epstein not trafficking kids or not having any evidence of him trafficking kids to any other people. Of course, as I have said on numerous occasions, these people were smart enough to not explicitly spell out their crimes in these emails. There definitely appears to be coded language that's used. Jeffrey Epstein makes the comment about using a different channel of communication so there won't be a forever record. The evidence would, of course, be found in the pictures and videos that were taken inside Jeffrey Epstein's various properties. Of course, there was never an investigation into Zorro Ranch, so who knows what evidence was lost from there. But here you can see that Maria F. Suarez Longondo, that would be the grandma, I believe. Mr. Mark Remillard of ABC News gave me your contact info. I am the grandson of a woman in her 60s who worked at Mr. Epstein's house in Manhattan as a housekeeper from 2012 to 2017. On the day she was fired from her job, she took with her some memory cards, pictures, videotapes, and audio tapes that she had found hidden in the house. We are not looking for monetary compensation at all, but we are being threatened by his lawyers, Mr. Indike and Mr. Can, to hand over the material to them. I'm not sure if I spelled the names correctly. I tried giving it to ABC's Mark Remillard, but because it contains child pornography, he is hesitant to receive it. Another news agency in the U.S. called Fox News verified the authenticity of the material through a local news correspondent here in Columbia, but we were told that they will only release some material and not all for political reasons. If you wish to speak to me, you can call me at this number or WhatsApp me at the same number. My wife and I are Catholica? Is that Catholic? I don't know. Catholica. What does that mean? Catholica. I think that Spanish, it might be Spanish for Catholic. Is that what it means? I don't know. I think it might be Spanish for Catholic, I think. Anyways, yeah, we don't want any money for this. Just 3 weeks ago, I found out about this because I speak English and my grandmother trusts me. Thank you very much. So the person who is receiving this email doesn't seem that they work for Fox News. They don't work for ABC, but the person who is receiving it is redacted, because he only mentions ABC News and Fox News as a separate party. I'd be really interested to know what happened to these materials. As somebody who is a journalist of sorts, I can understand having a little bit of hesitancy to accept child sexual abuse materials. You technically are committing a crime, even if this is for an investigative piece. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you know the FBI at this time. If this is the FBI, it makes sense to me that nobody ever found out about it. But, of course, I haven't for 1 second believed the narrative that Jeffrey Epstein only trafficked girls for himself and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is for all of these sick people. Now, Les Wexner, he submitted a written statement to the House Oversight Committee. He also appeared for a public deposition. I'm hoping that that will be revealed in the near future. In his letter, he says that he was just naive. He got duped by Jeffrey Epstein. He said Epstein was a con man, and he cut ties with him nearly 2 decades ago. He had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal conduct. How did he go from giving him a brownstone, one of the largest, most opulent mansions in New York City, to selling him a multi-million-dollar property right next door to him in Ohio, having Jeffrey Epstein manage not only his money, but the money for all of his companies, also transferring ownership of some of the L Brands properties to Jeffrey Epstein, like Limited 2, Justice, etc. And then suddenly you determine he's a con man, but he never gives a reason for that. He's like, yeah, just at some point I just decided I didn't like Jeffrey Epstein. But of course, we believe that Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing Les Wexner. At least that's what the letter that Jeffrey Epstein wrote to Les Wexner sure sounded like. Yeah, he was like, oh, don't worry, Les, I would never say anything that your family would want to hear about or that your family might think is going to portray you in a bad light. I certainly wouldn't tell the authorities what kind of a sick bastard you are either. So his statement begins, statement of Leslie H. Wexner. I am pleased to testify today. Pleased because it is an opportunity to set the record straight. Over the years, I have been the subject of outrageous, untrue statements and hurtful rumor, innuendo, and speculation. Let me state from the start, I was naive, foolish, and gullible to put any trust in Jeffrey Epstein. He was a con man, and while I was conned, I have done nothing wrong and have nothing to hide. I completely and irrevocably cut ties with Epstein nearly 20 years ago when I learned he was an abuser, a crook, and a liar. And let me be crystal clear. I never witnessed nor had any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. He just lied because he's saying that he cut ties with him because he was an abuser. Okay? So you are saying you cut ties with him because you came into the knowledge of his criminal activity. But then in the next sentence, you say that you never had any knowledge of that criminal activity. Both things cannot be true. I was never a participant nor a co-conspirator in any of Epstein's illegal activities. To my enormous embarrassment and regret, I, like many others, was duped by a world-class con man. I cannot undo that part of my personal history, even as I regret ever having met him. Before going any further, though, I want to acknowledge the survivors of Epstein's terrible crimes and the devastation that each of them has endured as a result. The pain he inflicted upon them is unfathomable to me. My heart goes out to each of them. I want you to know something about the man seated before you. I am 88 years old, a husband to Abigail since 1993. Look at him trying to humanize himself. The father of 4 adult children and proudly a grandfather. I have lived in Ohio my entire life. I am a philanthropist, a community builder, business owner, and the founder and former CEO of L Brands. I constantly strive to live my life in an ethical manner in line with my moral compass, devoting time and energy to my faith, my community, my business, my L Brands associates, and my family and friends. I founded L Brand, I founded the Limited stores in 1963 with a $5,000 loan from my Aunt Ida. I grew the company from one small store, the Limited, by creating, acquiring, and leading the development of a large multi-divisional retail company of brands such as Express, Bath & Body Works, Victoria's Secret, Lerner, Lane Bryant, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Henri Bendel. I took the company public in 1969, and I was the longest-serving CEO of a publicly traded company at the time of my retirement in 2020. While also running L Brands, I planned, marketed, designed, and developed both the Village of New Albany, one of the largest planned communities in America, and Easton Town Center, an innovative outdoor retail center in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. As an important part of my long-standing commitment to philanthropy, I created and continue to personally participate in the Wexner Foundation, which develops leaders and public servants. The total amount of our family's philanthropic giving to worthy causes exceeds $1 billion. Can't be a bad guy if I'm giving away that much money, can I? Nearly every waking hour during my work weeks was spent on the businesses. My weekends also were filled by business responsibilities, my real estate development interests, community, charitable projects, and ultimately, my growing family. Given these demanding time commitments, I long ago began hiring others to manage my personal finances, starting with Harold Levine, then Epstein, followed by Dennis Hirsch, and now a combination of my wife Abigail and an outside multifamily office. I was introduced to Epstein in the mid to late 1980s by Bob Meister, the former vice chairman of Aon. Bob knew I needed help managing my personal finances and suggested that I speak with Epstein. I did not rely solely on Bob's recommendation. I also consulted with Ace Greenberg and Jimmy Kane of Bear Stearns, Epstein's former employer, both of whom endorsed Epstein without hesitation. It's those guys you got to be looking at. Epstein, based upon work Epstein had done for his family, at first, Epstein was unwilling to take me on as a client. In fact, for the first few years I was acquainted with him, Epstein offered me advice here and there while explaining that giving individual financial advice was not his focus and refusing to accept compensation. He said he was assisting me as a favor. Little did I realize from the very start, Epstein was conniving to gain my trust. As my financial resources and time demands continued to grow, I formally hired Epstein to manage my personal finances. Because my public company and other duties required my full attention, I provided Epstein with a power of attorney so he could execute transactions quickly without constantly requiring my signature. The need for a power of attorney was clear to me, and I provided the same scope of authority to Epstein as I did to his successor, Dennis Hirsch. What I did not anticipate was Epstein misusing the trust I placed in him, despite his fiduciary obligations to act in my best interest. What is so clear only now is that Epstein lived a double life. He was clever, diabolical, a master manipulator. He was meticulous in revealing to me only glimpses into the life in which he was a sophisticated financial guru who consulted with heads of state, high-ranking politicians, royalty, university presidents, professors, CEOs, musicians, and other luminaries. He was a member of the Trilateral Commission and was a trustee of Rockefeller University. While I did not socialize in Epstein's social circle, he often told me about his famous acquaintances and important positions he held, and at times I experienced what seemed to be random chance encounters, probably orchestrated by Epstein, with prominent individuals who said they knew Epstein. Over the course of many years, he carefully used my acquaintances with important individuals to curate an aura of legitimacy. And then he used that to expand his network of acquaintances and apparent credibility even farther. The other life he led, that we now know was full of unthinkable crimes, he most carefully and fully hid from me. He knew that I would never have tolerated that horrible behavior. Not any of it. At no time did I ever witness the side of Epstein's life for which he is now famous. I am the father of 2 girls, now women, and the thought of what he did makes me sick. I dated Abigail for 3 years and have been married to her for 33. We are completely devoted to each other. To be clear, never once in 36 years have I been unfaithful to Abigail in any way, shape, or form. Never. Any suggestion to the contrary is absolutely false. Again, to be clear, I never saw or heard about Epstein being in the company of a minor girl. To the contrary, he led me to believe he was in a serious and long-term relationship with 2 women, Dr. Eva Anderson, also known as Eva Dubin, and later Ghislaine Maxwell, both of whom he said he contemplated marrying. I was never on his airplane. Contrary to rumor, I did not give Epstein the New York townhouse. He purchased it from me from what I was told was the appraised value. After we moved out, I never set foot in that house again. I visited Epstein Island only once, shortly after he purchased it, when Abigail, young children, and I stopped for a few hours one morning while we were on a cruise on a boat. Again, the side of Epstein that he chose to reveal to me was far different from the predator he eventually was exposed to be. As I have stated before, my contact with Epstein entirely terminated nearly 20 years ago. In late 2006, Epstein told Abigail that he had a legal issue in Palm Beach, but insisted that what he referred to as baseless, trumped-up charges by an over-aggressive police chief, and they would be dismissed. In 2007, however, Epstein informed Abigail that his situation could become messy and he might have to spend time away. To say the least, this was shocking. At the same time, Epstein suggested Abigail could handle our personal finances if he were to become unavailable. And for the first time, he provided with her the financial information she would need. Due to the complexity of the information, it took time to unravel, but after reviewing the information, it became clear to Abigail that Epstein had stolen vast sums of money from our family. Once I learned of his abusive conduct and theft from my family, I never spoke with Epstein again. Never. In September 2007, 9 months before he pled guilty in Florida, we revoked Epstein's power of attorney, removed his access from our bank accounts, and forced him to resign from all our affiliated entities. Confronted with his financial wrongdoings by Abigail, Epstein agreed to and did return a substantial amount of money, even while continuing to maintain his total innocence of any wrongdoing, never dropping the con. In light of his eventual guilty plea and deception of our family, we completely severed our relationship with Epstein. Epstein was permanently and irrevocably out of my life. While others visited Epstein in jail and associated with him and his release, I did not, nor did I witness, condone, or enable his crimes in any way. I want to thank the committee for its efforts to get to the bottom of Epstein's con and illegal activity. I hope you are successful in uncovering the truth and bringing closure to all survivors. If I am able to assist you in that effort by answering your questions, I am grateful for the opportunity to do so. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, that is it. But hold on. I want to take a look at something because I had sent my daughter that email indicating that that justice was transferred into the ownership of Jeffrey Epstein. I don't remember when. Okay, where is it? It was 2001. Okay, so it was definitely before, allegedly, Lex Wexner became aware of Jeffrey Epstein's illegal activity. The timeline actually does line up for when Epstein left the employment of Les Wexner. However, I find it interesting that he would claim that Jeffrey Epstein stole a ton of money from his family, and then Wexner chose to do nothing about it in a legal sense. Why wouldn't you go to the police? Why wouldn't you go to the police and say, hey, this guy worked for me and he stole a bunch of money? Well, you might not go to the police if you don't want the police to be involved, because there is a possibility of maybe Jeffrey Epstein divulging your secrets or your knowledge of the illegal activity that Les Wexner claims over and over and over again as he attempts to humanize himself in the eyes of the committee, that he has nothing to do with it. Now, the takeaway from this and it seems to be corroborated by Les Wexner's own words, is that Jeffrey Epstein's start in the business, to a large degree, came as a result of his association with Les Wexner. Certainly many, many millions of dollars came from this deal. But that's not to say that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't doing business before he met Les Wexner. Remember, he was already in finance. He had worked at Bear Stearns. His very first client was Adnan Khashoggi. So I think it's safe to say that his very first client was the CIA. Who knows what he did before that? But after Les Wexner's testimony, a group of Democrats went outside and they basically said Les Wexner is the reason Jeffrey Epstein existed.
They spent a lot of time together. Mr. Wexner admitted that he traveled to both Epstein's Island as well as his other properties. Mr. Wexner also admitted that Jeffrey Epstein had access to a lot of Mr. Wexner's wealth. And when asked even simple questions, even as it relates to Mr. Epstein being the co-president of the foundation that established the area that we're in today, Mr. Wexner had little to say. In fact, it's clear that Mr. Wexner is trying to downplay how close Jeffrey Epstein and Mr. Wexner actually were. And we should be very clear that there would be no Epstein Island, there would be no Epstein plane, there would be no money to traffic women and girls. Mr. Epstein would not be the wealthy man.
He wouldn't be everything that he was if it wasn't for Les Wexner financing him. I will say this. It's highly unusual for anyone to give a relative unknown the type of access and financial control that Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein. That's not exactly normal. Now, here's an interesting email right here. It's an email to Jeffrey Epstein inviting him to a fundraiser for a Democrat politician by the name of Max Baucus. Also, Senator Chuck Schumer is said to be in attendance. This would be an excellent chance to interact with two key Senate Democrats, Senator Max Baucus and Senator Chuck Schumer. Also, this was an email we've seen before, inviting Jeffrey Epstein to a fundraiser for Hakeem Jeffries, along with Comptroller-elect Scott Stringer. Here's another email to Jeffrey Epstein that was actually sent to his assistant, Leslie Groff, for Congressman Martin Heinrich. He wanted to get together for lunch with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was going to be running for the Senate in New Mexico. If Democrats are going to hold on to the Senate, this is a seat we have to keep, so we need your money, Epstein. Here is another email to Jeffrey Epstein where he is invited to lunch with Barbro. Don't know who Barbro is, but Barbro is a friend and of U.S. Congresswoman. Well, no, maybe Barbro is the Congresswoman. No, Diana DeGette, New York Congresswoman. That's who it was. Just kind of establishing a continuing pattern that we've seen over and over and over again. Now, this is another Democrat press conference that was held earlier today by Senator Ted Lieu and others in the Democrat caucus. They claim that they've just discovered a major bombshell that in this FBI document, Donald Trump is shown raping children. This is a claim that we've already examined, and the claim had no credibility. It is merely just another of many salacious accusations that are found in the files, but that don't actually line up with a crime. But that's not going to stop Ted Lieu from trying to get a couple of minutes in front of the fake news.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations, and I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're...
Well, no shit, Ted Lieu, but that never happened. Here's the thing. Donald Trump was never in attendance with Jeffrey Epstein at any of his events where he was trafficking children. He said that he was at one event where Jeffrey Epstein showed up with girls that were clearly not adults, and Donald Trump said, I got the hell out of there. And he had already kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he had attempted to groom girls there, and Ghislaine Maxwell attempted to do the same thing. Now, DOJ Rapid Response, which I thought I was following, responded to Ted Lieu and said, first, these salaciously insane accusations are in the library, unredacted. They published them with Donald Trump's name and everything. Second, they were found to have zero credibility. Ted Lieu is merely a carnival barker attempting to get some press to distract from all of the obvious connections to Democrats. Every single one of those requests to meet with Jeffrey Epstein to secure funding for campaigns, those were all after Jeffrey Epstein was already a registered sex offender in 2 states, both New York, where Chuck Schumer is still a senator, and down in Florida. Now, Ted Lieu responded to the Department of Justice, as you might expect he would. He said, you lie. Doc shows witness called the FBI's NTOC, states the girl directly told him Trump raped her. DOJ never interviews witness. Why'd you redact? There was no fucking redaction. Pardon my language. So they responded and said, Ted, lie you. She spoke with the FBI, and her claims were deemed not credible. This is all unredacted, as we said. Ted Lieu is a sideshow. Bad Blondie, good to see you. I'm challenging all patriots to match me $5. Let's show Zach and Lisa we appreciate their daily hard work. Zach, read this with your Asian accent. Okay. I'm challenging all patriots to match me $5. Let's show Zach and Lisa we appreciate their daily hard work. $5 make me holla. Please. Thank you very much. Bad Blondie. All right. Couple of revelations coming from the Epstein files in regards to some emails that we've already looked at. You probably remember this email right here where a redacted sender emailed Jeffrey Epstein about the fun night they had the night before and that his littlest girl was a little naughty. Now, we learned previously that this was not a man. This was actually a woman. It turns out that it is Susan Hamblin. Representative Anna Paulina Luna released this one. She said Susan Hamblin sent this email. She took a plea deal and was given victim status under previous DOJ. DOJ should look into the charges. Possible human rights violations were committed by Susan. I say that based on other files with her name on it. These women don't get to hide behind redactions. There were so many victims, none of which did what Susan did. This needs to be reopened. Susan Hamblin is also the person who gave Jeffrey Epstein permission to kill someone, which we saw in this email right here. I give you permission to kill him. He is apparently with Olga. He lied to you and he lied to me. And then says, no one will lie to you and get away with it from me. No one. Whoops is correct. Whoops is what Jeffrey Epstein says when people have died or are about to die. We know that because it's the only time he says whoops in these emails. It's related to death. Now, we've also learned that another email that was sent by a woman. That woman in this email would be Nadia Marcinko. Nadia Marcinko was the girl who was trafficked from Eastern Europe, and she became known as the plane girl. She actually owns a company that still operates, which kind of appeared to be a service that would use the same business model as Jeffrey Epstein's. It was like a private flight service using clearly sexualized women, and they would perform services for men as they were hired. Now, this is the email that was really disturbing to me. This is where Jeffrey Epstein was making fun of a little girl that was praying to Jesus. as he was about to molest her. She said she felt God's presence next to her when she was in bed. She knows that Jesus watches over her, and he helped save her life. And then he says, whoops. And she says, you should dress up as him when you see her. Of course, the "Oh, Jesus, I'm coming" trick. So clearly they are not only making fun of this little girl for getting molested by Jeffrey Epstein, but they're making fun of her Christian faith. This email was sent by Nadia Marcinko. She was also listed as a co-conspirator, and then she was given victim status so that she wouldn't get in trouble because she was part of the non-prosecution agreement. But there's a big difference between minors that were victimized versus ones that became adults and then chose to do these terrible things so they could have the money and all of the privileges that came with being associated with a rich and powerful person like Jeffrey Epstein. Again, the DOJ needs to reopen these charges. Several thank yous. Let me see here. First of all, Opteasy, Ted is panicking. Ask him why he took so much money and was a friend with murderer Ed Buck. If you guys don't remember, Ed Buck was a major Democrat booster from California who had a predilection for taking homeless black male prostitutes off the streets, plying them with drugs and alcohol, and then restraining them on a filthy mattress in his living room and forcefully shooting them up with enough crystal meth to kill a horse. There were a number of black gay prostitutes who died in his apartment, and Ed Buck finally was brought to justice several years ago. That was a big case. I really enjoyed covering it just because I liked knowing that he was going to die in prison. Also, Donnie Double says, just for the accent. Thank you, Donnie. Opteasy says, hey, Zach, I wanted to let you know some great news. Awesome, man. I've been waiting for you to reach out. My wife texted me about an hour ago. The PET scan she had yesterday came back clean. Praise Jesus. God is good. That means the cancer is gone, at least for now. Praise Jesus indeed. I'm so happy to hear that, Opteasy. I've been praying for you guys, and it's really good to see you out there again, buddy. Susan Boosin, my $5. Thank you for the $5. Jay Fontez, thanks, Zach. And here's a buck, but as you know, I'm cheap. It's okay, friend. It's okay. S2G109, good to see you, honey. Doing double the challenge to thank Zach and Lisa. Thanks for keeping things up to date. Thank you so much, S2G109. I appreciate you. Thank you very, very much. All right, now, Don Huffines has come out and done an interview with Matt Gaetz, and he has explained exactly why it was that he bought Zorro Ranch. I hadn't even considered this, and because he's now saying it publicly, this is going to have to happen. So I don't know if he planned this before or if this was a PR move, but apparently he said that the property at Zorro Ranch has been under construction for some time because he's transforming it into a Christian retreat. Let's take a listen.
Now you have plans to take something evil and bring it into goodness, bring it into light and positivity. Tell us about that plan.
Well, of course, that is the main reason I bought the property. This was obviously a dark place, and we wanted to put light in a dark place. It always shines the brightest when you do that. My faith is so strong in Jesus, and it really is. And I'm going to make this, the plan all along is to make this property into a Christian retreat. As a matter of fact, it's under construction today. And that's our goal. That's why we named it San Rafael. We named it Saint Raphael, as you probably know, an archangel, and what he does and helps people with is healing and being the healer, and also blessing those that are traveling. And we think that's really germane to this property.
Now you have plans.
All right, so now we've got an explanation from Don Huffines. It's plausible. I think that it is definitely in his favor that he's already publicly stated that he will participate in any investigation. What they need to do is get inside that property and look and see what's underneath it. Because if any investigation is done and they claim that there is no underground, we know that there is multiple levels. Okay, that's already been established in Jeffrey Epstein's own conversation. And they must do that as part of this investigation, not merely ground-penetrating radar of the surrounding property and the hills. We need a comprehensive search of Zorro Ranch, now San Rafael. Let me say thank you so much to Marcy. Marcy, good to see you. Challenge Met, thank you for all you do, Zach and Lisa. I appreciate you, Marcy. Marcy Serve. B-Gerbs, I appreciate you on here and on Badlands. You are always prepared. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you, B-Gerbs. Thank you for the donations. And let me go ahead and close out of this. A stunning reversal by Reuters when they wrote an article stating that millions of files related to Jeffrey Epstein suggest the existence of a global criminal enterprise that carried out acts meeting the legal threshold of crimes against humanity. This is coming from a panel of independent experts that were appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. Isn't that funny? Because that's exactly what we've been saying for years, that Jeffrey Epstein led a trialed trafficking organization that was part of a transnational criminal organization operating in virtually all countries around the world that was participated in and serviced world leaders, diplomats, powerful men and women in business and banking, people in every powerful walk of life, Hollywood, can't forget Hollywood. This is exactly what we've been saying. This is exactly what we were maligned for. I can't tell you how many fucking articles, pardon my language again, how many articles were written about me in particular making this exact statement. And now because the United Nations is talking about it, suddenly, oh, it's real. It's finally real. Now, what's funny here is that this article is actually paywalled. So although they say it in the headline, you can't go to the article and read it unless you actually pay them to do so. However, Billy Patterson, Billy over there on Twitter, she says, do you remember me? I used to watch you all the time. I was the one who sent you pictures of tunnels being dug for the White House. You have gotten a lot older, and so have I. I'm now 84 years. You were a young thing when you hid your face. I would like to watch it, but I just don't have enough time. Well, Billy, thank you for being here. I definitely remember you. And yes, the show has evolved since the time when it was a 10 or a 15-minute quickie. This is just the easiest way for me to do the show. And frankly, there is just so much information. I feel the need to put it all together. But Billy, it's good to see you out there on X. Thank you for that. All right. So again, this is paywalled. Moving on, because my good friend Liz Crokin actually took the UN report and she summarized the findings. Because the UN Human Rights Commission has determined that crimes against humanity were committed, they can now be prosecuted in both national and international courts, which is also getting closer to military tribunals. So these experts at the UN, they serve in their individual capacities under mandates from the UN Human Rights Council, but they are not staff of the United Nations. They said these alleged acts that have been documented in the Epstein files could amount to some of the gravest crimes under international law. This is a step farther than what Dan Bongino and Kash Patel said when they claimed that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't trafficking to anybody else. Either way, I'm glad to see this. The reported conduct could amount to sexual slavery, reproductive violence, enforced disappearance. That sounds like murder and then hiding the body, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, and femicide. A direct quote from the report: "So grave is the scale, nature, systematic character, and transnational reach of these atrocities against women and girls that a number of them may reasonably meet the legal threshold of crimes against humanity," they said. Under international criminal law, crimes against humanity occur when acts such as rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, trafficking, persecution, torture, or murder are committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against a civilian population with knowledge of the attack. The experts said the patterns reported in the files may meet this threshold and must be prosecuted in all competent national and international courts. They further underscored that resignations of implicated individuals alone are not an adequate substitute for criminal accountability. Welcoming steps by some governments to probe current and former officials and private individuals named in the files, they called on all other states around the world to do the same. any suggestion that it is time to move on from the Epstein files is unacceptable. It represents a failure of responsibility towards victims. It is imperative that governments act decisively to hold perpetrators accountable. No one is too wealthy or too powerful or too above the law. Now, I would like to show you guys a post from our favorite Anon, where he says right here, Clinton Foundation plus Soros journalists directed Africa, South America, special access programs, China, Russia, Uranium One, Hussein directed, Benghazi, Muslim Brotherhood, CIA assets, crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity, and he specifies Huma Abedin and the Wiener laptop. I just think that it's amazing that Donald Trump was able to convince the world to pay attention to the Epstein files, to pay attention to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, to pay attention to the very wealthy and powerful individuals that committed these atrocities with Jeffrey Epstein. And all he had to do was tell people to stop talking about the Epstein files. We've been blowing our horns from the highest rooftop for years on Jeffrey Epstein. We were maligned, we were shunned, we were banned, we had our accounts taken away, we were quite literally ridiculed for suggesting that a globalist transnational organization of wealthy elites were trafficking, torturing, and killing children. And all it took was for Donald Trump to say, you should stop talking about the Epstein files. And just like everything else, the SAVE Act, tariffs, immigration, all Donald Trump has to do is say one thing, and you have a whole segment of the population of the entire world that will do the exact opposite. Fucking genius. Again, I'm so sorry. I'm a little elated today. I have to be really honest with you, because I think that this is a big deal. Now, of course, you have to take into account that anytime something breaks through the cultural zeitgeist, like the Epstein files, you're going to have organizations like ABC News or any other mainstream outlet, Jen Psaki talking about the Epstein trafficking network. I mean, Jen Psaki, as I showed you yesterday, was part of the cover-up of the larger child trafficking network under Hillary Clinton when she was at the State Department. Some of these people are going to talk about this only because they just want to cover their own asses. But the ultimate point is that this has broken through. All of this is now public knowledge, and so much more is coming out every day. And I will be the first to tell you that much of these emails simply hint at what was really going on behind the scenes. But it's enough. It's enough for an investigation. It's enough to look at certain individuals. It's enough to begin. It may not be in its current form proof of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt for charges to be brought, but certainly there is enough for a probable cause affidavit and for people to be investigated. All right, couple of more thank yous over here. S. Reith says, here is $5 for you and Lisa. I listen almost every day and evening from Michigan. Hey, a former Great Lakes Stater. Just wondering, have you ever listened to Charlie LaDuff, a.k.a. NB News? I am definitely aware of Charlie LaDuff. I don't listen to him currently, but there have been a number of times that I've used clips of Charlie's reports here on the show, and he is one of the better independent journalists in the state of Michigan. But yes, definitely Charlie LaDuff is doing good work there in Michigan. Emerald Dragon says, I'm going to help you get all this out. F's for flying F's sake. F. There you go. Okay. All right. I will read that out. Fuckity fucking fucks for flying fuck's sake. Fuck. There you go. And I only said it because it was Emerald Dragon who actually put it out there. All right. So, final thank you from our friends over here on Rumble. And then I'll go through the final thank yous over on Pilled. Let me see here. All right, my friends. All right, parents, grandparents, we got to have just a moment for some real talk. This is a huge milestone for America that's coming up. We are about to celebrate the 250th birthday. That is 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known. This is the perfect time, perfect moment to have your kids understand why this country matters, not the pomp and circumstance, the fireworks, the hot dogs, even though those are great. We got to teach them the story behind it all. And there's a free guide. It's the Kids Guide to America's 250th Birthday. It's honestly a great way to introduce your kids to how America began, how the founding fathers were, who they were, what they risked, why the ideas they fought for still matter today. This guide sends those kids back to the moment when brave men signed the Declaration of Independence. They knew full well at that time they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way that kids can actually understand and they're going to enjoy. It doesn't water it down or turn it into boring schoolwork. So if you care about raising kids or grandkids who know where this country came from, why it's worth preserving, this is something that you're going to want to grab. And the best part is it's totally free with this special offer. All you do is pay $2 for shipping and handling. Just head on over to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com. And the Kids Guide to America's 250th Birthday is there for your kids today. Because America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. If you're on Rumble, you can use that QR code on screen. Everybody else, freeusabirthday.com. Thank you very much for being here. All right, and the final thank yous from our friends over here on Pilled. Let me jump up a little bit. All right, Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. One Thunder, thank you for the cookie. Delana, 55, good to see you. I had a friend that went to Ohio State in the 90s. She said Wexner liked to party with the young boys. That does not surprise me. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Serpentine says, I'm just here for Zach's crackhead voice. Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci impression. That was kind of close to my Dr. Fauci impression. I think my Dr. Fauci impression's just a little bit more extreme. Make sure you get your shots, kids. Mayatua, thank you for the cookie. Just Josie says, LOL for the accent alone. Mayatua, thank you again for the cookie. Black Adder says, comfy bunker days. Foxhole pilled. Infiltrated to be heard. Free speech and even seen. Izzy led by good looks equals creepy claims Ash. Zach, Ash MOD is screwing pilled free speech. I'm fighting for Suffolk, England. Okay, so are you saying that free speech is suffering over on Pilled? Is there something that's happening over there that I'm not aware of? But I understand that you guys are under major threat in England right now. And I actually just saw a story that I forgot to line up for today. But there is a British citizen who was currently just granted political asylum in the United States of America because the British government wanted to put him in prison for lighting a Quran on fire. Now, people in Britain have gone to prison for far less, just making a post online, sharing a meme on social media, and the bobbies show up and they put you in handcuffs and they take you to jail. There was another case that we covered in England not that long ago where a Muslim migrant raped like a 12-year-old girl, and 3 British men said something about it on social media, and the courts actually put those 3 innocent British men in prison for longer than the rapist because they said something about it on social media. You patriots in England are putting up with quite a bit. And I know that there is a new political party that is a breakaway from Reform, Reform UK, which is Nigel Farage's party. Hold on just a second. New English Party. There was an announcement that I just saw about it. Hold on. I totally botched that. New English Party. What is the name? His name is Rupert Lowe. I played a clip from Rupert Lowe a long time ago when he spoke out about how bad shit is in the UK right now. Restore Britain. There we go. Rupert Lowe, Restore Britain. Rupert Lowe is based. And if I was living in the UK, I would be supporting Rupert Lowe and the Restore Britain party. All right, we're actually going to close out with this, guys. G. Fontes says no need to mention, no need to read, but my intention was to affect a rhyme, including here's a buck and I'm cheap as fuck. LOL. Okay, I get it now. All right. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. And Blackadder says, please, Zach, I'm in Graham Moore. Ash is stopping me telling. I don't know. Can you send me a message or something? Can you send me an email? redpill78@proton.me. I don't know if you're talking about Ash from Badlands or also the Kenzie fam says better and more info on this show than just about any others. I lurk while I'm working. Even Dan Bongino, that is high praise, my friend. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for that $1 over there through the Rumble wallet. $1 in Tether. I appreciate it. All right, we are going to watch this Restore Britain video as we close out the show. Maybe join me tonight at 9 p.m. on Badlands Media for Altered State with Brad. Good luck. God bless. Pray for Britain, and we will see you guys next time.
I've chosen to speak to you today from the farm because places like this represent what proper Britain is about. Hard work, responsibility, effort, duty, stewardship. This is the England I know, and this is the England that I love. On a farm, you don't think in election cycles or headlines or polling. You think in seasons. You think in generations, in what you leave behind to those who come after you. And that's why, here on the farm, I am now launching Restore Britain as a national political party. I'm now going to dedicate my life to finding, organising, funding, and providing hundreds of qualified candidates to present to the British people at the next general election. This process has already started, with invitations being issued to patriots in aligned political parties, Reform, the Conservatives, the SDP, Advance, and more. In local politics, we will work in partnership with localised political parties, such as Great Yarmouth First, that have the best interests of their residents at heart, combining our forces at the next general election. The men and women standing for Restore in that election will not be politicians. I promise you that. They will not be failed ministers. They will not be tainted by failures of the past. They will be from business, from the military, from science, from medicine, from education, from industry, representing real communities up and down the country. Every single one will be from well outside the existing political establishment, and every single one will understand the difficult decisions that need to be taken. Because there are no easy fixes. I'm not going to tell you comforting lies about the condition of our country. I have only ever been honest with the British people, and I will be straight with you now. What is necessary will be incredibly painful. But for the first time in a very long time, voters will have a genuine alternative which is truthful with them about the scale of what now has to be done. The first priority is to control who comes to our country, and more importantly, who stays in our country. Restore Britain will not just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Every single illegal migrant will be securely detained and then deported. The message will be unrelenting. If you are in this country without our permission, you will be removed. For the foreseeable future, far more people must leave Britain than arrive. If a foreign national is unable to speak English, lives in social housing, claims benefits, refuses to work, fails to integrate, commits crime, or even actively hates our way of life and wishes to do us harm, then they must leave or be made to leave. Restore Britain will make our communities safe again for women and children. That I promise you. If that means millions go, then millions go. We're constantly told that the economy needs vast swathes of low-skilled migrants. We know that's simply not true. What we need is to get millions of healthy Brits back into work. A radical overhaul of how welfare is delivered. Protecting those in genuine need, but not funding healthy shirkers to live off the back of hard-working men and women. If you can work, you must work. It really is that simple. Restore Britain will be abundantly clear. If you consistently refuse work, then you will lose your benefits. We will punish indolence, and more importantly, we will reward success. We will provide vast economic incentives for men and women to start businesses, generate opportunities, build wealth, and create self-sufficient families. Standing here today on the farm, I know exactly what it means to deal with energy bills, labor shortages, regulation, unproductive paperwork, planning restrictions, tax, and endless uncertainty. The state has definitively become the enemy of the people. Restore Britain will burn away suffocating taxes on work and enterprise. We will slash unnecessary regulation. We will dismantle bloated quangos and the overbearing HR culture. We must crush parasitic Britain. We will restore long-term, stable, logical policy so that businesses can plan and invest and grow again. But Restore Britain is about much more than numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about who we are as a nation and who we are as a people. Britain is not just an economy. Britain is not just an idea. Britain is not just a passport. Britain is a nation. Britain is a people, our people. And Restore Britain will never allow that to be erased. We will celebrate our Christian heritage and the identity that built and shaped this country. Responsibility, restraint, forgiveness, duty, and fairness. In short, a high-trust society. That will mean defending our culture. That will mean resisting the relentless creep of radical Islam. That will mean banning the burqa, outlawing Sharia law, blocking cousin marriages, and reimposing our Christian-based rule of law. A Restore Britain government would legislate to ensure that no halal or kosher slaughter on British soil. This is Britain, and we will do things our way. This political party now exists for one reason: to restore Britain, to make it a better, safer, and more prosperous place for British men and women to raise their families. It will be difficult, and it will be painful. But I assure you, it is possible. I hope you will consider joining me on this journey and becoming a member of our party. It is our country. It is now our collective responsibility to act. Together, we will restore Britain. Thank you.